Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the first time I set foot in that house on Mulberry Lane. The late October air had a peculiar stillness about it, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and impending frost. As a foreclosure inspector for the county, I'd seen my share of abandoned homes, each with its own silent story of loss and abrupt departures. But this Victorian-style house, with its faded blue paint and sagging porch, seemed to hold its breath as we approached. Records show the Brennan family lived here for almost 20 years before the bank took it, my assistant Marlene murmured, her voice barely disturbing the quiet. Left about 7 months ago. Neighbors say it was sudden. I nodded, my footsteps creaking methodically across the wooden porch boards. The lockbox clicked open, and the front door swung inward with a low, reluctant groan. That sound, I still hear it sometimes when I'm drifting off to sleep. Inside, the house told the familiar story of hasty abandonment. Mail scattered across the entryway floor, a coffee mug on the kitchen counter with a ring of dried brown residue. A calendar on the refrigerator still turned to March, though it was now late October. Nothing particularly unusual for a foreclosure, except for the heaviness in the air, a density that seemed to press against my eardrums. "We should split up," I said quietly. "You take the downstairs, I'll check the upper level. The bank needs a full inventory by tomorrow." The stairs complained under my weight as I ascended, my hands sliding along the smooth wooden banister. Upstairs, the hallway extended to the left and right, with 4 doors, 2 on each side. Standard bathroom and bedrooms, I assumed, pulling out my clipboard and digital camera. The first room appeared to be a home office, with built-in bookshelves still containing paperbacks and reference materials. The next was clearly a guest bedroom, the mattress stripped bare but otherwise unremarkable. The bathroom contained nothing but forgotten toiletries and a shower curtain with a subtle nautical pattern. The master bedroom was at the end of the hall, its door partially open. I pushed it wider, revealing a spacious room with a bay window overlooking the backyard. A king-sized bed stood against the far wall, stripped of its linens like the other. 2 nightstands, a dresser, a floor lamp, all ordinary, all covered in a thin film of dust. I was nearly finished with my notes when something about the wall to my right caught my attention. Perhaps it was the way the afternoon light cast shadows across the room, or maybe some unconscious recognition of asymmetry in the dimensions. Whatever it was, I found myself standing before what appeared to be a standard wall, my eyes tracing its surface with growing curiosity. The drywall had been carefully installed, but there was something off about it. A slight discoloration ran vertically from floor to ceiling, almost invisible unless you were looking directly at it. I ran my fingertips along the wall, feeling a subtle seam beneath the paint. "Marlene," I called down, my voice sounding unexpectedly loud in the empty house. "Can you bring up the toolbox?" When she joined me several minutes later, I was still examining the wall, now tapping it gently with my knuckles. "Listen," I said, demonstrating the difference in sound between this section and the adjacent wall. Hollow here, but different hollow, like there's space behind it. "Could be a closet they walled over," Marlene suggested, setting down the toolbox. "Maybe trying to change the layout before they left." I nodded, though something about this felt deliberate, more concealment than renovation. With careful precision, I used a utility knife to cut along the seam, creating a small opening that I could then expand with a pry bar. The drywall came away in chunks, revealing what was indeed a door, painted white and fitted with a simple brass knob. "A locked door," That's strange, Marlene whispered, her usual professional detachment wavering. Why would someone wall over a locked door? I examined the lock, a basic privacy lock, the kind you'd see on a bathroom door, nothing substantial. With a flathead screwdriver from the toolbox, I was able to disengage it within seconds. The mechanism released with a soft click that seemed to echo in the silent room. For a moment, neither of us moved to open it. That moment of hesitation, I've replayed it countless times in my mind. What if we had simply documented it and moved on? What if we had called the bank first, or even the police? But curiosity is a powerful force, especially when cloaked in professional obligation. I turned the knob and pushed the door inward. The smell hit us first, not the expected mustiness of a sealed room, but something sweeter, like baby powder and lavender. As the door swung fully open, the late afternoon sunlight spilled into a perfectly preserved nursery. Pale yellow walls, a white crib positioned beneath a window, a changing table with neatly stacked diapers, a rocking chair with a small crocheted blanket draped over its arm, everything covered in a fine layer of dust but otherwise untouched, as if waiting for a baby to arrive. I don't understand, Marlene whispered. The property records didn't mention any children. The Brennans were in their 50s when they moved in. I stepped into the room, careful not to disturb anything unnecessarily. A mobile hung above the crib, delicate paper stars and moons suspended on invisible threads, gently stirring in the air current from the open door. On a small bookshelf, children's books stood in a tidy row, their spines uncracked. It was when I approached the crib that I saw it, a baby monitor resting on the mattress. Not an old model, but something relatively recent, with a video display. Its small red light was blinking, indicating it was still powered on. "That's impossible," I said quietly. "The electricity was shut off months ago." I picked up the monitor, its plastic warm against my palm. The screen flickered with static, occasional shadows moving across its grainy surface. And then, barely audible above the electronic hiss, came the sound, a soft, rhythmic breathing. In, out. I stood frozen, staring at the device in my hand, while behind me, Marlene gasped softly. "Is that coming from the monitor?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I turned the volume dial and the breathing became more distinct, unhurried, regular, the breathing of someone in deep sleep. "Where's the camera unit?" I asked, scanning the room. Most baby monitors came in pairs, a camera that watched over the child and a receiver that parents carried. We searched the nursery methodically, checking shelves, drawers, looking behind furniture. There was no camera unit to be found. "Maybe it's in another room," Marlene suggested, though her voice betrayed her unease. We expanded our search to the rest of the house, room by room, our earlier efficiency replaced by a growing sense of urgency. Nowhere did we find the other half of the monitor pair, yet when we returned to the nursery, the breathing continued, steady and unmistakable. I placed the monitor back in the crib and stepped away, an inexplicable chill spreading across my shoulders. "We need to document this and report it to the bank," I said, trying to maintain a professional tone, "and probably the police." As we finished photographing the room, I noticed something else, a name painted on the wall above the crib in delicate silver script, Morgan. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of that pristine nursery behind drywall kept resurfacing in my thoughts, the breathing on the monitor, the name on the wall. I called the county records office first thing the next morning and requested everything they had on the Brennan family. What I learned only deepened the mystery. Thomas and Alina Brennan had indeed purchased the house 20 years ago. No children were ever listed at that address. A deeper search revealed that Alina had been hospitalized briefly about 15 years earlier, but medical records were sealed. I contacted the bank handling the foreclosure and was told the Brennans had simply stopped making payments. Letters went unanswered. When bank representatives visited the property, they found it abandoned. 3 days later, I returned to the house with a police detective, a solemn woman named Rodriguez who listened to my story without comment. Together, we went back to the nursery. The monitor was still there, still powered on, but now it was silent. Detective Rodriguez took it as evidence, along with several other items from the room. "We'll try to locate the Brennans," she assured me. Though honestly, walking away from a mortgage isn't a crime. The hidden room is unusual, but not necessarily sinister. I nodded but couldn't shake the feeling that something important was being overlooked. What about the name, Morgan? "We'll look into birth records, see if they had a child that wasn't in the property documents." I left the house that day feeling unsettled, certain that I was missing something essential about the Brennan family and their abandoned home. 2 weeks passed before Detective Rodriguez called me. "We found Alina Brennan," she said without preamble. "She's in a care facility about 40 miles north, early onset dementia. Been there since her husband died last year." "Then Morgan?" I asked. A pause on the line. "That's why I'm calling. According to Alina's medical records from 15 years ago, she suffered a miscarriage in her second trimester. The fetus was a girl. They had planned to name her Morgan." The information settled over me like a heavy blanket. And the nursery, the monitor. Mr. Brennan apparently built the nursery before they knew about the pregnancy complications. After losing the baby, Alina couldn't bear to see it, so he sealed it off. As for the monitor, another pause. The care facility staff say Alina keeps asking if anyone is watching Morgan. She insists she can still hear her breathing sometimes. After that call, I requested a transfer to commercial property inspections. I didn't want to enter another foreclosed home. Sometimes at night, when the world grows quiet and I'm drifting towards sleep, I imagine I can hear it too, that soft, steady breathing, coming from somewhere both very close and impossibly far away. The house on Mulberry Lane sold 6 months later. I often wonder if the new owners have discovered the nursery yet, or if they ever will. Some doors once opened can never truly be closed again. Story 2. I remember the afternoon light filtering through the dusty windows of my newly acquired apartment. Golden rays stretched across the worn hardwood, illuminating dancing particles of sawdust that hung suspended in the air. The space smelled of lemon-scented furniture polish and the faint mustiness that lingers in any dwelling with history. This was to be my sanctuary, my fresh start after years in the cramped confines of city living. A second-floor walk-up in a converted Victorian home, charming, affordable, mine. The previous tenant had left behind a large area rug in the living room, a faded Persian with intricate patterns that had once been vibrant but now told stories of footsteps and spilled wine from decades past. I decided it needed to go. The real estate listing had mentioned original hardwood floors throughout, and I was determined to restore them to their former glory. As I rolled back the heavy fabric, my fingers tracing along its rough underside, the floorboards revealed themselves inch by inch. They were beautiful in their imperfection, amber-hued oak with knots and grain patterns that swirled like frozen rivers. But then I saw it, and my breath caught in my throat. There, carved into the wood with what must have been painstaking precision, was a name, Rebecca Winters. The lettering was neat, deliberate, roughly 3 inches in height. My pulse quickened as recognition dawned slowly, like a winter sunrise. The handwriting, those distinctive loops in the E's, the slight rightward slant, it was unmistakably mine. And beneath it, separated by a thin line, buried. I hadn't written this, I couldn't have. I'd never set foot in this apartment before the showing 3 weeks ago. Yet there it was, my handwriting, my style, but not my memory. The carving looked weathered, as though it had been there for years, quietly waiting beneath that rug for someone, for me, to discover it. I ran my fingers over the grooves, feeling each cut in the wood. They were deep, created with purpose. I found myself whispering the name aloud, Rebecca Winters, testing how it felt on my lips. The name held no significance to me. I knew no one by that name. Yet somehow my hand had apparently carved it into these floorboards, and that final word, buried, sat heavy in my mind like a stone. I didn't call the police immediately. What would I say? That I'd found my own handwriting mysteriously etched into the floor of my new apartment. That I'd apparently carved a stranger's name and a single ominous word without any recollection of doing so. Instead, I did what any person would do in the 21st century. I searched online for Rebecca Winters. The search returned thousands of results, of course. Rebecca Winters was not an uncommon name. There were authors, attorneys, teachers, Instagram influencers, living Rebeccas scattered across the country. None seemed connected to my apartment or this neighborhood. I narrowed my search, adding my city and state. The third result caught my attention, a brief mention in a local newspaper article from 15 years ago. Rebecca Winters, aged 24, reported missing. Last seen leaving her apartment on Elmwood Avenue, my street. The article was frustratingly brief, mentioning only that foul play was not suspected and that Winters had recently gone through a difficult breakup. The prevailing theory seemed to be that she had simply left town to start over. I sat back, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating my face in the growing darkness of evening. Could this Rebecca have lived in my apartment? I pulled up the property records for the building, but they showed only corporate ownership for the past 20 years, a management company that had likely changed tenants countless times. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake, listening to the subtle sounds of the old building, the expansion and contraction of wooden beams, the occasional creak of settling foundations. And beneath it all, the persistent thought of that name carved below me, as if Rebecca herself were whispering from within the floorboards. The next morning, I called my landlord with what I hoped was casual curiosity. I was wondering about previous tenants, I said, keeping my voice light. Specifically, did someone named Rebecca Winters ever live in this apartment? A pause stretched across the line. Why do you ask? His usually friendly tone had cooled considerably. I manufactured a story about mail being delivered for her. He seemed to accept this, but his answer was unsatisfyingly vague. That was before my time, he said. The building changed hands in 2010. Over the following days, I became increasingly fixated on Rebecca Winters. I visited the local historical society, combed through old newspapers on microfiche, and even struck up conversations with longtime residents of the neighborhood. Fragments of information emerged slowly, like pieces of a puzzle sliding into place. Rebecca had indeed lived in my apartment from 2008 to 2009. She had worked as a graphic designer for a now-defunct local advertising agency. She was described as quiet, creative, and intensely private. She had few friends in the area, having moved from somewhere out west. and one day in late November 2009, she simply vanished. The police investigation had been perfunctory at best, with no signs of struggle in her apartment and several personal items missing, including a suitcase. They concluded she had left voluntarily. The case file gathered dust, eventually closed without resolution. But that word beneath her name, buried, gnawed at me. It suggested something far more sinister than a young woman starting fresh somewhere new. I began to have dreams, vivid, unsettling visions of myself carving those letters into the floor. In these dreams, my hands moved with purpose, guided by muscle memory I didn't possess. I would wake with my fingertips aching, as though I had spent hours gripping a carving tool. One evening, while examining the carving for perhaps the 100th time, I noticed something I had previously overlooked. The wood around Rebecca's name was slightly different in color than the surrounding floorboards. It was almost imperceptible, but once seen, impossible to ignore. A rectangular section roughly 6 feet by 3 feet had been replaced or extensively repaired. My heart pounded as a terrible thought formed. I recalled the building's layout. My apartment was directly above the building's small cellar, accessible only from the outside entrance. I had seen it just once during my initial tour, a cramped space used primarily for storage and housing the ancient boiler. The next day I waited until the building was quiet before making my way down to the cellar. The door protested with a low groan as I pulled it open, revealing a set of narrow stone steps descending into shadows. The air that rose to meet me was damp and earthy, carrying the scent of wet stone and mildew. My phone's flashlight cut through the darkness as I descended. The cellar was much as I remembered it, low ceiling with exposed pipes, rough stone walls, and a dirt floor that had been partially concreted over in uneven patches. I moved slowly, scanning my light across the ground, searching for anything unusual. Against the far wall, directly beneath where my living room would be, I noticed a section where the concrete looked newer than the rest, a rectangular patch with cleaner edges. The dimensions appeared to match the discolored section of flooring above. I knelt down, running my hand over the surface. Unlike the rest of the cellar floor, which was rough and unfinished, this section had been carefully smoothed. My fingers traced along the edge where it met the older concrete, feeling a slight ridge. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat in my living room, staring at the carving in the floor, trying to understand my connection to Rebecca Winters. Why had I written her name in my own handwriting? How could I have carved something into a floor I had never touched before 3 weeks ago? The answer came to me as dawn broke, casting long shadows across the room. I suddenly remembered a detail from the Historical Society's archives, a photograph of the building from the 1970s. In it, the Victorian home stood proud, but it was clearly a single-family dwelling. The conversion to apartments had come later. This building had once been whole, not divided. The flows of life and death had moved through it as one unified space. Perhaps in some way I couldn't yet comprehend, so had time itself. I called in sick to work and drove to the county records office. Hours of searching through property documents revealed what I had begun to suspect. My apartment building had once been owned by my grandmother's family. They had sold it in the 1960s, long before I was born. I had never known this. My grandmother had passed when I was very young, and my parents had never mentioned any connection to the property. But somehow, across decades, I had been drawn back to this place, and somehow Rebecca Winters had known I would come. Had she carved my handwriting, mimicking a style she had somehow foreseen? Or was there a more unsettling explanation, that I had somehow reached back through time to leave myself a message? I haven't called the police about what lies beneath the cellar floor. Not yet. Instead, I've begun carving my own message into the floorboards beside Rebecca's name, a warning, a confession, a connection across time. A single word that holds everything I've discovered. Found. Story 3. I still think about room 311 on quiet nights like this one. The way the hallway lights would dim slightly outside that particular door, as if electricity itself was hesitant to fully illuminate whatever mystery lay behind it. That's how it all began for me, with inconsistent lighting and an inconsistency in our records that shouldn't have been possible. My name is Daniel Mercer. I've been the night manager at the Pinewood Hotel for 7 years now. It's a mid-range establishment in a town just large enough to attract business travelers and weekend tourists, but small enough that we know most of our regular guests by name. Nothing remarkable ever happens here. At least, that was true until 3 months ago. The night was unusually quiet, a Tuesday in late October, with a steady rain tapping against the tall windows of our lobby. I remember the sound distinctly, gentle, persistent, almost meditative. The kind of rain that makes you want to curl up with a book rather than venture outdoors. Perhaps that's why I was so alert, so attuned to the smallest details. The lobby was empty except for me, seated behind the polished oak reception desk, reviewing the day's check-ins and preparing for the midnight shift change. I noticed it during my routine review of the occupancy report. Room 311 was not listed as occupied in our system. Yet earlier, Hannah, our afternoon desk clerk, had mentioned in passing that all rooms on the third floor were full. It was a minor discrepancy, the kind that typically results from a clerical error or a last-minute cancellation that wasn't properly recorded. The sensible thing would have been to check the physical logbook where guests sign their names upon arrival. I pulled the heavy leather-bound book toward me, the pages making that distinctive sound as they turned, a soft whisper of paper against paper. I traced my finger down the list of names, dates, room numbers. No entry for room 311. According to our records, no one had checked into that room. I reached for the room key board behind the desk. The brass key for 311 was missing. Someone was in that room, or at least someone had access to it. The rational explanation was simple. Hannah had given someone the key but forgotten to log them in the system. It happens occasionally, especially during busy check-in periods, but something about this particular discrepancy made the skin at the back of my neck prickle slightly. Perhaps it was the quietness of the hotel that night, or the hypnotic rhythm of the rain against the windows, but I felt compelled to investigate. Our security cameras are modest but functional, one in the lobby, one covering the main entrance, and one at each stairwell and elevator bank. I sat down at the small monitor tucked beneath the counter and began reviewing the afternoon footage. Frame by frame, I watched guests come and go. The usual business travelers with rolling suitcases, a young couple holding hands, a family with 2 exhausted children. Each face was captured clearly as they approached the front desk, exchanged pleasantries with Hannah, received their keys, and moved toward the elevators or stairs. Not one of them was directed to room 311. I watched the entire afternoon's footage twice, focusing on the third-floor hallway camera. No one entered room 311. The door remained closed, undisturbed in the slightly dimmed lighting of that particular section of hallway. By this point, a more reasonable person might have simply called it a night. Perhaps the key had been misplaced. Perhaps Hannah had set it aside for a late arrival who never showed. There were countless innocent explanations. But in the quiet of that rainy night, with nothing but the gentle ticking of the lobby clock to keep me company, I decided to check the room myself. The elevator hummed softly as it carried me to the third floor. The doors opened with a gentle chime that seemed too loud in the silent corridor. The hallway stretched before me, carpeted in deep burgundy with cream-colored walls adorned with tasteful landscape prints. Room 311 was midway down on the left, just past a small alcove where the ice machine hummed quietly. I stood outside the door for a long moment, listening. No sounds came from within, no television, no shower running, no movement. I knocked softly, then with more authority. "Hotel management," I called, my voice sounding unnaturally formal even to my own ears. "Just checking that everything is satisfactory with your accommodations." Silent. I used my master key, opening the door slowly after announcing myself once more. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the bathroom nightlight, standard in all our rooms. I reached for the light switch by the door. The room appeared normal at first glance, bed neatly made, curtains drawn against the night. But then I saw it, a medium-sized suitcase placed precisely in the center of the bed. Not tossed there carelessly as most guests might do upon arrival, but positioned with deliberate care as if it were a centerpiece, an object meant to be noticed. I approached slowly, aware of my heartbeat quickening slightly. The suitcase was unlocked. Inside were men's clothes, neatly folded, 3 button-down shirts, 2 pairs of slacks, undergarments, socks. Nothing unusual except for the complete absence of any personal items. No toiletry bag, no phone charger, no wallet. Except there was a wallet, I discovered, placed neatly on the nightstand as if someone had emptied their pockets before retiring for the night. I opened it carefully, using a tissue from the bedside box. Inside was $750 in crisp $50 bills. No credit cards, no driver's license, no identification of any kind. Beside the wallet lay a handwritten note on hotel stationery. 5 words in precise, even handwriting: "Thank you for your hospitality." The bathroom was untouched, towels still folded, complimentary toiletries still sealed. The bed had not been slept in. It was as if someone had arrived, unpacked minimally, and then, what? I stood in the center of that quiet room, listening to the rain against the window, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Someone had been here, or at least someone had wanted us to believe they had been here, yet no one had checked in. No one had been captured on camera. No one had used the bed or the shower or left any trace of themselves beyond clothes that could belong to anyone and money with no explanation. It was when I turned to leave that I noticed the photograph tucked partially under the lamp base. I slid it out carefully. The image showed Hannah, our afternoon desk clerk, standing at her front door, key in hand, looking down at what appeared to be her mail. It was clearly taken from a slight distance, perhaps from a car parked across the street. Nothing threatening in the composition, just Hannah, going about her daily routine, completely unaware she was being photographed. On the back of the photo, in the same precise handwriting as the note, "She never saw me. None of you ever do." I called the police immediately. They arrived within 15 minutes, 2 officers who walked through the room with measured steps and latex gloves, cataloging the suitcase, the clothes, the wallet, the note, the photograph. They dusted for fingerprints and found none. Not on the door handle, not on the light switch, not on the suitcase or its contents. The room had been wiped clean of any human presence. Probably some kind of prank, the older officer suggested, but I could tell from his expression that he didn't believe it any more than I did. The investigation that followed revealed little. The security footage showed nothing unusual. No one entering room 311, no one lingering suspiciously in the hallways or lobby. The suitcase was a common brand available at any department store. The clothes were equally unremarkable, tags removed. The cash consisted of bills that couldn't be traced. The handwriting offered no distinctive characteristics that might help identify its author. Hannah was understandably shaken when shown the photograph. She had no idea who might have taken it or why. No threatening calls had come to her home. No unusual encounters at work. Nothing to explain why someone would photograph her and leave that image in an unoccupied hotel room. Days passed, the police investigation stalled. Room 311 was cleaned, inspected, and returned to the rotation of available accommodations. Guests stayed there without incident. Life at the Pinewood Hotel resumed its normal rhythm. Except for me, I found myself checking and rechecking the occupancy reports each night, paying special attention to room 311. I reviewed security footage more thoroughly than necessary. I walked the third-floor hallway during my shifts, pausing outside that particular door, listening for sounds that shouldn't be there. 2 weeks after the incident, Hannah resigned. She'd found another job, she said, one that didn't require her to interact with the public quite so much. I understood. I would have done the same if I'd been in her position. A month later, I was working the front desk alone on another quiet, rainy night when the lobby door opened. A man entered, average height, average build, unremarkable features. The kind of person you could pass on the street a dozen times and never remember. He approached the desk with unhurried steps. "Good evening," I said, the standard greeting automatic on my lips. "Welcome to the Pinewood Hotel." He smiled, a pleasant, forgettable smile. "Thank you. I've heard good things about your establishment." "Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" I asked, fingers poised over the keyboard. "No," he replied, still smiling. "Just thought I'd stop by and see the place for myself." He glanced around the lobby appreciatively. "Very nice, exactly as I imagined." Something in his tone made me look up sharply. His eyes met mine, and for a brief moment I felt a strange certainty that I was looking at the person who had left that suitcase, that money, that note, that photograph. But there was nothing I could point to, nothing definitive, just an impression, a feeling of wrongness that disappeared as quickly as it had come. "Well," he said, turning toward the door, "I won't take up any more of your time. Perhaps I'll return as a proper guest someday." He left before I could respond, disappearing into the rainy night. I rushed to the security monitor and watched him walk away, his figure blurring slightly in the rain until he moved beyond the camera's range. The next day I reviewed the footage again, thinking I might show it to the police. But when I reached the time stamp when the man should have entered the lobby, the screen showed only an empty entrance. When he should have stood at my desk, the footage showed me alone, looking up and speaking to no one. I've checked the cameras, I've had experts examine the system for signs of tampering. Everything is functioning properly. According to our technology, that man was never here. According to our records, no guest ever stayed in room 311 that night. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard. And sometimes, on quiet nights like this one, with rain tapping gently against the windows, I wonder who else might be here that I cannot see, checking in without arriving, departing without leaving, moving through our lives unnoticed until they choose, for reasons known only to themselves, to leave behind a trace. The logbook still shows no check-in, the cameras still show nothing unusual. But room 311 had a suitcase with clothes, a wallet with cash, and a handwritten note that simply said, "Thank you." No fingerprints, no sign of who had stayed, just that note and a photo of our desk clerk taken from inside her own home. And sometimes when I walk past room 311 late at night, the lights in that section of hallway dim ever so slightly, and I can't help but wonder, Is someone watching me right now? Someone I'll never see until they want me to. Story 4. The first time I heard about the Henderson case, I was sitting at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon, rain tapping gently against the windows of the precinct. The sound had a rhythm to it, almost like fingers drumming impatiently on wood. The case file landed on my desk with a soft thud, pushed forward by Captain Wilson's weathered hand. "This one's got a strange feeling to it, detective," he said, his voice low and measured. "Family out in Cedar Hills, thought they had raccoons. Turns out it was something else entirely." I nodded, watching as he walked away, his shoes making that familiar squeak against the linoleum floor. The manila folder sat there, unassuming. I ran my fingertips over its smooth surface before opening it, the paper cool to the touch. Inside was the beginning of what would become one of the most unsettling cases of my career. The Henderson family had lived in their two-story colonial for nearly 7 years. Mark and Laura, both in their early 40s, their 2 children, Emma and Jacob, 13 and 10, a golden retriever named Cooper. The perfect family in a perfect house on a perfect street lined with maple trees that turned brilliant shades of orange and red every fall. But perfection, as we often discover in my line of work, is rarely more than a carefully maintained facade. It began with noises, small sounds that could easily be dismissed, scratching within the walls, the occasional thump from somewhere indeterminate. The sounds always came at night, sometimes just as the family was settling into sleep, sometimes in those deep, dark hours when even the moon seemed to have turned away. "We thought it was animals," Laura Henderson told me when I first interviewed her. "We sat in their kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked a well-maintained backyard. Her fingers nervously twisted the wedding ring on her left hand, around and around in an endless circle. You know how it is with these older houses. There's always something, a squirrel in the attic, mice in the walls." Mark nodded in agreement, his hand reaching over to steady his wife's. "I checked the attic myself twice. Nothing. Set traps in the basement. Nothing there either." The scratching continued for weeks, gradually becoming more persistent. The family began to notice other things too, items slightly out of place. A family photo that had been moved from one shelf to another. The refrigerator door left open overnight. Small things, things easily attributed to forgetfulness or children being children. "I actually blamed Emma at first," Laura admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, "for eating snacks at night and not cleaning up, for moving things around." Emma, sitting across from us, shook her head slowly. Her eyes, wide and solemn, held the kind of wariness I usually see in people 3 times her age. "I told them it wasn't me. I kept telling them." It wasn't until the dog began acting strangely that they truly became concerned. Cooper, normally placid and friendly, began to stand at the kitchen door leading to the basement, growling low in his throat. He refused to go down those stairs, planting his paws firmly and pulling back if anyone tried to lead him. At night, he would sometimes stare fixedly at the heating vent in the living room, his ears perked forward, body rigid with attention. After nearly 2 months of escalating disturbances, Mark finally called an exterminator. Suburban Pest Solutions arrived on a Wednesday morning, a 2-man team with equipment to check the crawl space that ran beneath part of the house. The area was accessible only through a small hatch in the back of the hall closet, an entrance so tight that Mark had never bothered to explore it himself. The lead technician, a man named Ray Dunham, later described to me what they found. His voice had been steady as he gave his statement, but I noticed how his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "I've been doing this job 15 years, found all sorts of things in crawl spaces, raccoon nests, snake skins, Once found a cat that had been missing for 3 weeks. He paused, drawing a deep breath, but I never found anything like this. The beam of Ray's flashlight had swept across the cramped space, illuminating not animal nests but evidence of human habitation. A thin mattress pad lay pressed against one wall. Surrounding it were empty food wrappers, dozens of them granola bars, chip bags, candy wrappers. A plastic bottle repurposed as a makeshift toilet. And most disturbing of all, a spiral notebook with a black cover. When Ray handed the notebook to Mark Henderson, the family's world collapsed. Inside were detailed observations of their daily lives when they left for work and school, which windows they left open on warm days, the code to their garage door, what shows they watched in the evening when they went to bed, the position of the security system sensors, and at the end of each entry, written in the same meticulous handwriting, still waiting. The entries went back 5 months. I spent hours in that crawl space, the rough concrete scraping against my knees as I documented everything. The space was no more than 3 feet high, requiring me to crouch awkwardly as I worked. The air was stale, carrying the faint scent of human occupation, sweat, processed food, the unmistakable smell of someone who hadn't bathed properly in some time. The mattress pad yielded several long, dark hairs. The food wrappers, all carefully stacked in one corner, showed no signs of mold or extensive decay. None were more than a few weeks old. From the ceiling of the crawl space, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, was a small hole that provided a view into the heating vent in the living room, the very spot Cooper had been fixated on. Whoever was living here could see right into your main living area, I explained to the Hendersons later that day. They had relocated to a hotel, unwilling to spend another night in the house. Laura's face had gone pale as she clutched her husband's arm. "But where did they go? How did they get in and out without us noticing?" she asked, her voice breaking. It was a question that continued to haunt the investigation. The exterior access to the crawl space, a small hatch on the side of the house, was rusted shut, clearly unused for years. The only other entrance was through the hall closet inside the house itself. Fingerprints recovered from the notebook and wrappers yielded no matches in any database. The hairs found belonged to a male with no criminal record. The house showed no signs of forced entry. The security system had never registered any unauthorized access. 3 days into the investigation, Emma Henderson approached me privately. "I saw him once," she confessed, her young voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "I thought it was a dream. It was really late and I got up to get some water. There was a man standing in the hallway just looking into my parents' room. When he turned and saw me, he put his finger to his lips. Then I blinked and he was gone." "Why didn't you tell your parents?" I asked gently. "Because when I checked the house with Dad the next morning, all the doors were locked. The alarm was on. There was no way someone could have been inside." She looked down at her hands, so I decided it must have been a nightmare. It wasn't a nightmare. 2 weeks after the discovery in the crawl space, officers responding to a break-in at a house 3 streets over apprehended a man hiding in the homeowner's attic. Daniel Mercer, 34, had no fixed address. In his possession was a backpack containing energy bars, water bottles, a flashlight, and a notebook identical to the one found in the Henderson home. Mercer had been entering homes in the area for nearly a year, establishing hidden living spaces in crawl spaces, attics, and basements. In some cases, he had stayed for months, observing the families, learning their routines, occasionally moving through their homes while they slept. When asked why he wrote "still waiting" at the end of each entry, his answer was simple and chilling. "I was waiting for the right moment," he said. "For what?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Mercer just smiled, his eyes focused on some distant point beyond the interrogation room wall. For them to realize they weren't alone. The Henderson family never returned to their house on Maple Street. They couldn't bear to live in spaces that had been invaded, to walk hallways knowing someone had watched them from hidden vantage points, to sleep in rooms where a stranger might have stood observing their most vulnerable moments. Sometimes on quiet nights when I'm alone with my thoughts, I find myself wondering about the houses around me, the spaces we never think to check, the thin boundaries between our lives and those who might be watching from the shadows. I think about how fragile our sense of security truly is, how easily it can be breached by someone patient enough to wait. And I find myself listening with renewed attention to every unexplained sound in the darkness. Story 5. I remember the day I first stepped into this case like it was yesterday. The gentle patter of rain against the windows of the precinct, the soft yellow glow of my desk lamp cutting through the dim office. It was late September, that peculiar time when summer reluctantly gives way to fall and the air hangs heavy with change. The file landed on my desk with a soft thud. Detective Ramirez had placed it there while I was refilling my coffee. "This one's different," she'd said, her voice unusually quiet. "Take your time with it." I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I watched the steam rise from my mug, curling and disappearing into the air. Cases like these require a certain mindset, a willingness to step into darkness without rushing. Finally, I opened the manila folder and began reading the statement of Sarah Mercer. Sarah was 33, an elementary school teacher from Oakwood Heights. Her life had been ordinary in the most comforting sense of the word, a steady job she loved, a small circle of close friends, a modest apartment with plants that thrived under her care, until 3 weeks ago when she'd applied for a home loan. "I'm sorry, Ms. Mercer," the loan officer had told her, his expression puzzled. "But according to our records, you already have 3 substantial loans and a mortgage." His fingers had tapped across his keyboard, bringing up records that shouldn't have existed. The statement detailed how Sarah had spent the next week untangling a web of financial confusion. Credit cards she'd never applied for, a mortgage on a house she'd never seen, auto loans for cars she didn't own, all under her name, her social security number, her identity. What caught my attention was what happened next. Most identity theft victims spend months on the phone with banks and credit agencies. Sarah had done something different. The bank had reluctantly provided the address of the mortgage, a small bungalow on Westlake Drive, about 40 minutes from Sarah's apartment. She'd gone there. I paused my reading, letting that sink in. The courage, or perhaps the recklessness, of driving to an address where someone was actively stealing your identity. I took another sip of coffee, now cooling, and continued reading. Sarah had knocked on the door of the pale blue house with white trim. She'd expected no one to be home, or perhaps to find the house abandoned. Instead, a man had opened the door. Average height, early 40s, with kind eyes and a beard that was neatly trimmed. The kind of face you'd pass 100 times on the street without noticing. "Sarah," he'd said, her name falling from his lips with a familiarity that chilled her. "You finally came." He'd smiled, not the nervous smile of someone caught in a crime, but the warm smile of someone greeting a long-lost friend, and he'd invited her in. The most disturbing part of the statement described what Sarah had found inside. The house was modestly furnished, clean and organized, but covering the walls were photographs. Sarah at her college graduation, Sarah at the beach with friends last summer, Sarah walking her neighbor's dog, all familiar moments from her life, but in each photo, standing beside her was this man, a man she had never met, digitally inserted with remarkable skill into the timeline of her life. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking the passing minutes as I considered the case. This wasn't the usual identity theft motivated by financial gain. This was something more unsettling, a life constructed around an obsession. The next morning I drove to Westlake Drive. The house matched the description, pale blue with white trim, a small but well-maintained garden. Yellow police tape crossed the front door. The man who we now knew as Daniel Whitaker had disappeared the night after Sarah's visit. I ducked under the tape and entered the house. The photographs had already been cataloged and removed as evidence, but I could see the lighter patches on the walls where they had hung. In the kitchen, I found a calendar. Sarah's schedule was meticulously noted: her classes at school, her weekly coffee with friends, her dental appointments. A parallel life constructed with careful attention to detail. The basement door was heavy, solid oak that seemed newer than the rest of the house. It opened to reveal wooden stairs descending into darkness. I flicked on my flashlight and made my way down carefully, each step creaking softly beneath my weight. The basement had been converted into a workspace. A large desk held 3 computer monitors, all dark now as our tech team had already removed the hard drives. What drew my attention was the corkboard spanning the entire back wall. While the photographs upstairs had been carefully framed moments of a fabricated shared life, this was something different. The corkboard held a timeline, meticulously constructed with strings connecting photographs, documents, and handwritten notes. It began 15 years ago when Sarah was still in college. A newspaper clipping showed her receiving a community service award. From there, the thread spread outward, documenting a life observed from a distance. In the corner of the basement, nearly hidden behind an old filing cabinet, I found a small shrine-like arrangement. A framed photograph of a young woman who resembled Sarah, perhaps a sister or cousin, surrounded by dried flowers. Next to it, a newspaper obituary for Elizabeth Whitaker, Daniel's sister, who had died 17 years earlier. As I climbed back upstairs, pieces began falling into place. The identity theft wasn't about money. It was about proximity, about inserting himself into the life of a woman who reminded him of someone he had lost. Over the next few weeks, we pieced together Daniel Whitaker's story. His sister Elizabeth had died in a car accident during her sophomore year of college. 5 years later, Daniel had encountered Sarah, who shared his sister's auburn hair and small frame at a campus alumni event. What began as a chance encounter had evolved into a 15-year obsession. He had never approached her, never threatened her. Instead, he had created an elaborate parallel reality where he existed in her life. The loans and credit cards weren't for personal gain, they were tools to create connections between them, threads in the tapestry of his delusion. We found Daniel 3 months later, living under a new name in a small coastal town 200 miles away. His new apartment was bare, with no photographs, no shrine, no evidence of his obsession. When we took him into custody, he asked only one question: how is Sarah doing? The case file now sits in our closed investigations cabinet. Daniel Whitaker was sentenced to 5 years for identity theft and related charges, with mandatory psychiatric treatment. Sarah Mercer moved to another state, changed her name, and deleted her social media accounts. Sometimes on quiet nights when the office is empty and the rain taps gently against the windows, I think about Daniel's basement timeline. About how someone can live alongside us for years, sharing our most intimate moments without us ever knowing they're there, about how thin the line is between the lives we live and the lives others imagine for us. And I wonder how many photographs I might appear in, on walls belonging to people I've never met. Story 6. I remember the day I first noticed it. The air in my new home was still heavy with the scent of fresh paint and cardboard boxes. 3 weeks had passed since I'd moved in, and I was finally settling into a routine in this charming Tudor-style house on Maple Street. The neighborhood was quiet, almost too quiet sometimes, but after years in the city, I welcomed the silence. That evening, as I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner, a sound like the whisper of silk against paper drifted through the vent near the floor. At first, I dismissed it as the natural settling of an older home, the gentle creaking that comes with changing temperatures. But then I heard my own voice, distant yet unmistakable, reciting a phone conversation I'd had with my sister 2 weeks prior. "I just don't think the blue curtains work in here. Maybe something in a warm gray." My knife paused over the cutting board, hovering above a half-sliced onion. I held my breath, straining to listen. My voice, continued, replaying a mundane conversation about interior decoration choices that no one else should have known about. A chill traced invisible fingers up my spine. I set the knife down carefully, wiping my hands on a dish towel as I moved toward the vent. Nailing, I pressed my ear against the metal grate. The sound had stopped. I waited for several minutes, but there was nothing except the soft hum of the refrigerator behind me. That night, sleep eluded me. I convinced myself it was just fatigue playing tricks on my mind, or perhaps the neighbor's television had somehow carried through the walls. Old houses have their quirks, after all. 2 days later, it happened again. This time, I was in the upstairs bathroom, applying mascara before heading to work. Through the small vent near the baseboard came my voice once more, a different conversation, this one with my realtor from nearly a month ago. The windows in the master bedroom really sold me on this place. So much natural light. I froze, mascara wand suspended midair. This was no coincidence. There was no rational explanation for how my private conversations were being played back to me through the vents of my own home. My first thought was that someone was playing an elaborate prank. Perhaps the previous owners had installed some sort of recording system and were now tormenting me from afar. I called my friend Marcus, who worked in IT security. He arrived that evening with various electronic devices I couldn't name. "If someone's bugged your place, we'll find it," he assured me, his expression serious beneath the glow of his flashlight as we began examining the vents. We started in the kitchen, removing the vent cover to reveal nothing but dusty ductwork. The bathroom vent yielded the same result, but when we reached the vent in the hallway, Marcus's detector emitted a soft beep. He shined his light deeper into the metal passage and frowned. "There's something in there," he murmured, reaching for a small pair of needle-nose pliers. What he pulled out made my blood run cold. A small tape recorder, no bigger than a deck of cards, nestled in a custom-made bracket that attached to the inside of the ductwork. It was labeled in neat block letters, Session 7. "Let's keep looking," I whispered, my mouth suddenly dry. By midnight, we had found 11 recorders hidden throughout the house's ventilation system. Each was meticulously labeled, Session 1, Session 2, and so on, and positioned to capture sound from different rooms. Most disturbing of all, they weren't wireless or modern. These were old-fashioned cassette recorders that someone would have had to physically access to replace the tapes. "This isn't automated," Marcus said. laying the devices out on my dining room table. "Someone's been coming into your house to change these tapes out." My hands trembled as I picked up the one labeled Session 1. With a deep breath, I pressed play. My own voice filled the room, discussing moving arrangements with the movers on my very first day in the house. Every word was crystal clear, as though the recorder had been in the room with me rather than hidden in a vent. "Who would do this?" I asked, looking at the neat row of recorders. Marcus carefully examined one of the devices. "These are expensive models, professional grade, and look," he pointed to a small engraving on the bottom. "They have serial numbers. They could be traceable." The next morning, we took the recorders to the local police station. Detective Laura Simmons listened patiently as I explained my discovery, her weathered face betraying no emotion until I mentioned the address of my new home. Then, almost imperceptibly, her eyebrows raised. 1487 Maple Street, she repeated, opening a drawer in her desk. "You're the new owner." I nodded, watching as she pulled out a thin file folder. "Did your realtor mention anything about the previous owners, or why the house was on the market?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Just that the owners were an older couple who moved to Florida for retirement," I replied. "The house had been on the market for a while, which is why I got such a good deal." Detective Simmons opened the folder, revealing a photograph of a balding man in his 60s. His eyes were pale blue behind wire-rimmed glasses, his smile tight-lipped and formal. Was Dr. Kenneth Reeves," she said. "He and his wife lived in that house for 32 years. He was a psychiatrist specializing in audio-based therapeutic techniques." My confusion must have shown on my face, because she continued without prompting. "Dr. Reeves was investigated 3 years ago when a patient claimed he had recorded their sessions without consent and then used the recordings to blackmail her. The case didn't go to trial, insufficient evidence, but his reputation was damaged. He surrendered his license voluntarily and reportedly moved to Florida." I felt the room tilt slightly. "But these recordings are of me, in my home, weeks after I moved in." Detective Simmons nodded slowly, "which means either Dr. Reeves never left town or someone else has continued his work." Over the next 2 weeks, forensic technicians combed through my house, discovering a hidden access point in the basement that connected to the ventilation system. The space showed signs of recent use: fresh fingerprints, footprints in the dust that didn't match my shoes, and a small workstation with tools for maintaining audio equipment. The fingerprints matched Dr. Reeves, but there was no trace of him in any database since his supposed relocation to Florida. His wife, when contacted by phone, insisted they had both been living in Sarasota for the past year, though she sounded uncertain when asked about her husband's current whereabouts. I stayed with friends while the investigation continued. The police installed security cameras around my property and set up surveillance, hoping Dr. Reeves would return to collect his recordings or install new ones. On the third night of surveillance at 2:17 a.m., a figure was captured on camera entering the basement through the hidden access point. The police moved in silently, arresting a thin, disheveled man who barely resembled the professional-looking doctor in the photograph. Dr. Reeves had been living in a small apartment just 3 blocks from my house, using a different name and appearance. In his apartment, they found hundreds of labeled tapes dating back decades, organized by address and subject name. Mine wasn't the first house he had monitored after losing his license. There were 5 others, each with its own box of neatly categorized recordings. When questioned about his motives, Dr. Reeves was unnervingly calm. "I'm continuing my research," he stated simply. "Human behavior is most authentic when people believe they're alone. My methods may seem unorthodox, but the data is invaluable." The case against him was airtight this time, with physical evidence and my testimony. He was convicted on multiple counts of breaking and entering, invasion of privacy, and stalking. I still live in that house on Maple Street. I've had the entire ventilation system replaced and security measures installed throughout the property. Most days, I don't think about the man who listened to my private moments through the walls, who cataloged my life as if I were merely a subject in his twisted research project. But sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, when the house settles and creaks around me, I find myself listening intently for the sound of my own voice coming back to me through the vents. And I wonder about all the conversations, all the quiet moments of vulnerability that are preserved on tapes I'll never find, echoes of myself, captured by a stranger who believed he had the right to collect them like butterflies pinned under glass. The walls aren't listening anymore. At least, that's what I tell myself as I drift off to sleep. Story 7, I remember the exact moment everything changed. The precinct was quiet that afternoon, just the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional ring of a distant phone. I'd been at my desk for 14 hours reviewing case files when Officer Reeves placed the missing persons report in front of me. The photo paperclip to the corner made my coffee go cold in my hand. 12-year-old Eliza Mercer had been missing for 72 hours. Brown hair cut in a neat bob, hazel eyes that seemed to hold secrets, a small birthmark just below her right ear. But it wasn't these details that made my skin prickle. It was the uncanny resemblance she bore to another girl, one I'd been investigating for years without anyone knowing. Detective Reeves was still standing there waiting for some acknowledgement. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and he walked away, his footsteps fading into the ambient sounds of the station. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Same facial structure, same contemplative expression. Even the way she tilted her head slightly in the photograph. It was as if someone had duplicated Cassie Bowman, the 12-year-old whose cold case had haunted me for the past decade. But Cassie's file had been archived years ago, her disappearance classified as a probable runaway after months of dead ends. I pulled my jacket from the back of my chair and headed for the Mercer residence, a modest 2-story house in the suburbs with a well-kept lawn and cheerful potted plants that seemed to mock the gravity of what was happening inside. The evening air carried the scent of freshly cut grass and distant rain. Mrs. Mercer opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red-rimmed but dry, as if she'd exhausted her tears and was now operating on pure nervous energy. Behind her, Mr. Mercer paced the living room, speaking quietly into a phone. The home had that peculiar stillness that settles in when a child is missing, like the air itself is holding its breath. "Have you found anything?" Mrs. Mercer asked, leading me into a kitchen where coffee had been brewing too long, filling the room with a bitter aroma. I placed Eliza's photo on the table between us. "I need to ask you something that might seem strange," I began, watching her face carefully. "Did Eliza have a sister, perhaps a twin or a sibling who might have been adopted separately?" The change in her expression was subtle, just a tightening around the eyes, a momentary freeze in her movements as she poured coffee into a mug with shaking hands. "No," she said too quickly. "It's just Eliza always has been." Mr. Mercer had appeared in the doorway, his phone call apparently finished. "What kind of question is that?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there when I arrived. I showed them Cassie's photograph then, pulled from my case files, a girl with the same eyes, same smile, same birthmark. 10 years had passed since this photo was taken, but the resemblance to Eliza was undeniable. "This girl disappeared in 2014, I explained gently. "Cassie Bowman, she was never found." The Mercers exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Mrs. Mercer's hand trembled as she set down her untouched coffee. "We've never seen that child before," Mr. Mercer stated flatly, but a muscle worked in his jaw and he wouldn't meet my eyes. They were lying. 20 years in law enforcement had taught me to recognize the signs, the micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in body language. But why lie about knowing another missing girl, unless? "Would you mind if I looked around Eliza's room?" I asked, keeping my tone conversational. Sometimes children leave clues about where they might go. The hesitation was brief but noticeable. "Of course," Mrs. Mercer finally said, leading me upstairs to a bedroom decorated in soft blues and purples. Eliza's room was meticulously organized, books arranged by color on shelves, desk cleared of clutter, bed made with hospital corners. It felt staged somehow, as if someone had arranged it specifically for visitors to see. Not the typical chaos of a 12-year-old's private space. "Did you clean in here after she disappeared?" I asked casually, running my finger along the dustless shelf. "Eliza's always been very neat," Mrs. Mercer replied, watching from the doorway as I moved around the room. I nodded, crouching to look under the bed. Nothing but pristine hardwood floor. The closet revealed clothes hung with equal precision, shoes paired perfectly below. It wasn't until I checked the window seat, lifting the cushion to reveal a hidden storage compartment, that I found anything of interest. A small journal bound in faded leather, its pages filled with a child's handwriting. And pressed between 2 pages near the end, a photograph worn at the edges as if handled frequently. 2 identical girls stood side by side in front of a Christmas tree, their arms around each other, identical smiles revealing identical gaps where baby teeth had fallen out. Mrs. Mercer made a small sound behind me, something between a gasp and a sob. "I think we need to have a conversation," I said, turning to face her with the photograph held gently between my fingers. "About why your daughter has a picture of herself with a girl who looks exactly like her, a girl who happens to look exactly like another child who went missing a decade ago." The story unraveled slowly over the next few hours in their living room, as rain began to fall outside, pattering against the windows like impatient fingers. The Mercers weren't the Mercers at all. They were the Bowmans, Cassie's parents, who had fled their previous life after her disappearance, changing their names and starting over in a new state. "We had twins," Mrs. Bowman finally admitted, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Identical twins, Cassie and Eliza. But when they were born, WWE couldn't afford 2 children. We made a terrible choice." Mr. Bowman continued where his wife faltered. "We gave Eliza up for adoption privately, told everyone she'd been stillborn, kept Cassie. But the girls somehow found each other online when they were 12. They'd been talking for months, planning to meet." "The day Cassie disappeared," I said quietly, "she was going to meet her sister." They nodded in unison, the weight of their deception visibly crushing them. "When she didn't come home, we panicked, reported her missing, but we couldn't tell the truth about where she might have gone. and then weeks later we received a letter. Mrs. Bowman rose shakily and retrieved a box from a locked drawer. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting childish but determined. "I found my sister. I know what you did. We're going to be together now, the way we should have been from the beginning. Don't look for us." "We thought it was a cruel joke at first," Mr. Bowman explained, "but then photos started arriving. The girls together, always with their faces partially obscured, enough to know they were alive, not enough to find them." "And you never reported this?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice neutral. "How could we? We would have had to explain everything." Mrs. Bowman wiped her eyes. "Then the photos stopped coming. 3 years of silence. We couldn't bear it anymore, so we moved here, changed our names, tried to start over. Until last week," Mr. Bowman said, "when Eliza showed up on our doorstep, alone. Said her name was Eliza Mercer and that she was our daughter. Showed us her birth certificate with our original names on it. Said she'd been living with Cassie all these years, but now Cassie was gone and she needed to come home. We took her in," Mrs. Bowman continued. "She looked so much like our Cassie, said she'd explain everything soon, and then 3 days ago she just vanished, just like Cassie did, left behind only this." She handed me a broken picture frame, its glass cracked, that they'd found partially buried in the backyard. Inside was the same photograph I discovered in the journal, the twin girls at Christmas. On the back in fresh ink, "You can't keep us apart, not again." I left the Bowman house as midnight approached, the rain still falling steadily, turning the suburban streets into reflecting pools of streetlight. The case had transformed entirely, no longer a simple missing persons investigation, but something far more complex. 2 identical girls, separated at birth, finding each other, disappearing together, then apart, leaving cryptic messages in their wake. Were they running, hiding? Was someone else involved? The questions multiplied with each passing hour. As I drove back to the station, headlights cutting through the rain, I couldn't shake the image of those twin faces in the photograph, so identical yet somehow distinct to my trained eye. One face smiling with innocent joy, the other with something more calculating behind her eyes. I've been tracking missing children for 20 years, but never have I encountered a case where the missing might not want to be found, where they might, in fact, be orchestrating their own disappearances in an elaborate game of psychological revenge. Tonight, as I add new photos to my case board and connect red threads between them, I can't help but wonder, which twin am I really looking for? And more disturbing still, which one might be looking for me? The Bowmans will be brought in for formal questioning tomorrow. Their deception has colored everything about this investigation, making it impossible to know where truth ends and manipulation begins. But somewhere out there, 2 girls with identical faces are either running together or from each other, and I won't rest until I understand why. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can almost hear them whispering, their voices indistinguishable from one another, a perfect mirror of perfect twins. "You can't keep us apart, not again." Story 8. I remember the day the journal arrived. It was a Tuesday in late October, when the air carried that particular scent of decay and renewal that only autumn brings. The mail carrier had placed it carefully among the usual bills and advertisements, yet somehow it stood apart immediately, a leather-bound book with no packaging, just my address inscribed in a flowing script that seemed both elegant and hurried. There was no return address, no explanation, just a journal, its cover worn at the edges as if it had passed through many hands before finding mine. The leather was soft, supple, the kind that only comes from years of handling. I ran my fingers across its surface, feeling the slight impressions of what might have been initials once embossed on the cover, now nearly worn away. I carried it inside, away from the chill that had begun to settle into my bones. My apartment was quiet except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the building settling. Sitting at my kitchen table, I placed the journal before me, watching how the late afternoon light cast long shadows across its surface. For several minutes I simply observed it as if it might suddenly speak and explain its presence. When it remained silent, I finally opened it, the spine crackling slightly in protest. The handwriting inside was neat but pressed deeply into the page, as if the writer had been gripping the pen with unusual force. "My name is Alina Winters," the first entry began. "If you're reading this, I need you to understand what happened to me." I paused, took a sip of the tea I'd made, chamomile with a touch of honey, and settled deeper into my chair. Outside, the wind had picked up, rustling the remaining leaves on the maple tree beyond my window. Alina Winters, the name meant nothing to me. I'd lived in this apartment for nearly 5 years and knew most of my neighbors, at least by sight. No Alina Winters. I continued reading. The journal entries began ordinarily enough. Alina described her life as a research librarian at a university I recognized about 40 miles north of here. She wrote about her small circle of friends, her cat named Fitzgerald, her passion for obscure medieval texts, normal life rendered in careful detail. But by the 10th entry, dated approximately 6 months before the journal arrived at my door, the tone began to shift. Alina wrote of feeling watched, at first just a vague sensation while walking home from the bus stop. Then more specific incidents, a figure glimpsed outside her apartment window, though she lived on the 4th floor. Books on her shelf rearranged while she was at work. The scent of cologne in her bathroom when she lived alone. I found myself glancing up from the journal, scanning my own apartment. The shadows had lengthened as evening approached, and I rose to switch on a lamp, its warm glow dispelling the darkness that had gathered in the corners of the room. Alina's entries grew more frequent and increasingly fractured. She began to doubt her own perceptions. Colleagues at the library commented on her distraction, her pallor. She took time off work, installed new locks, purchased a security camera that mysteriously failed to record during the night hours. "I found my cat's brush on the kitchen counter today," she wrote in an entry from late summer. "I always keep it in the bathroom cabinet. Always. I mentioned it to Dr. Harmon, but he just made another note and asked about my sleep patterns again. He doesn't believe me. No one does." I made more tea, this time something stronger, a black tea with bergamot that filled my kitchen with its fragrant steam. The journal lay open before me, waiting. My fingers traced the edges of the pages, noting how some were wrinkled, as if they had once been dampened and then dried. Alina's handwriting changed as the journal progressed. The neat, measured script grew more slanted, the pressure behind the pen causing occasional tears in the paper. She wrote of nightmares where someone stood at the foot of her bed, watching. Of waking to find objects moved, a glass of water relocated from bedside table to dresser, her slippers placed neatly at the front door rather than beside her bed. "I've started taking photographs," one entry read. "Not of the apartment, of myself. Every night before bed I take a selfie. It's the only way I can be sure he isn't changing me somehow. Silly perhaps, but I swear my reflection looked different yesterday. My left eyebrow was higher, my hair parted on the opposite side. I've started marking my skin with small dots from a pen before I sleep, to be certain it's still my body when I wake." I closed the journal for a moment, listening to the apartment building's night sounds, the distant closing of a door, water running through pipes, the radiator's metallic ping as it heated. Normal sounds, familiar sounds. I returned to the journal. Alina had begun sleeping in different locations within her apartment, never establishing a pattern. One night the couch, another the bathtub, sometimes just the floor of her closet, buried beneath hanging clothes. She described the relief of daylight, how she would sit by her window as the sun rose, watching people begin their normal days while she existed in a parallel reality of fear and vigilance. The entries became shorter, more cryptic. Found a strand of hair on my pillow, not mine, too dark. And later, someone has been using my computer. The keys are warm when I wake. And then I hear breathing sometimes, just on the edge of sleep, perfectly matched to my own, but slightly behind, like an echo. I realized I had been sitting completely still, barely breathing. Outside my window, the streetlight flickered, creating momentary darkness before stabilizing again. I considered calling someone, a friend perhaps, but it was after midnight now. Besides, what would I say? That I was unsettled by a strange journal that had arrived in my mail. The final third of the journal documented Alina's decision to leave her apartment. She stayed in hotels, changing locations every night. She wrote of watching security footage from hotel hallways, convinced she could see a figure that always remained just out of clear view. She described calling the police, who found no evidence of stalking or break-ins at her apartment. "I'm not crazy," she wrote repeatedly, the words sometimes underlined 3 or 4 times, the pen tearing through to the next page. "I know what I've experienced. I know someone is there." Her last coherent entry described her plan to leave the city entirely. "I've purchased a ticket," she wrote. "I won't write the destination here. I won't tell anyone. A fresh start where he can't find me. I'll mail this journal to a random address before I go. Someone should know what happened in case." The sentence trailed off. The final page was indeed stained with what I couldn't be certain. Coffee perhaps, or tea. The paper was wrinkled as if it had been wet and dried. The writing was hurried, almost frantic, the letters running together. "I thought I was being careful," it read. "Checked every room in the motel, even under the bed, but just now I heard something, a breathing that isn't mine. I turned and saw nothing, but when I looked back at this page, there was a message written here that I didn't write. It said, 'He's behind you.'" The entry ended there. The remaining pages of the journal were blank. I sat motionless in my kitchen, listening to the silence of my apartment. The tea beside me had gone cold. Outside, the wind had died down completely, leaving an unnatural stillness. In the days that followed, I tried to locate information about Alina Winters. There was indeed a university library 40 miles north, but they had no record of an employee by that name in the past decade. No social media profiles matched her description. No local news reports of a missing librarian. I considered turning the journal over to the police, but what would I tell them? That I received the strange writings of a woman who might not exist. That her paranoid delusions had begun to affect my own sleep, my own sense of security. The journal now sits in my desk drawer. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine I can hear the whisper of its pages turning, though the drawer remains firmly closed. Sometimes I wake, certain that something in my apartment has shifted position while I slept. And sometimes, in the moment between wakefulness and dreams, I think I hear breathing that matches my own, not quite in sync, but following just behind, like an echo, or like someone learning my rhythm, preparing to match it perfectly. I've started taking photographs of myself before bed, just to be certain, just to be safe. Because the strangest thing happened yesterday. I was sorting through my mail, bills, advertisements, the usual, when I found a small key. Old-fashioned, made of brass, no note, no explanation. It fits the lock on the journal perfectly. Story 9, she'd been having the same nightmare for years, a house she'd never seen, with a red door and peeling wallpaper. So when the real estate listing popped up, she clicked instinctively. The house was real, for sale, and when she visited, she found her own initials carved into the windowsill. I still remember the weight of the case file when it landed on my desk that cool October morning. The manila folder was thin, unusual for a missing persons case, the edges crisp as if recently assembled. The overhead lights in the precinct buzzed quietly, casting a pallid glow that made everything look washed out, like an old photograph fading with time. Detective Sarah Linden, the file read. Her photo stared back at me, dark eyes that seemed to hold questions even from the glossy paper. 34 years old. Reported missing after failing to appear at a department briefing 3 days ago. No signs of struggle at her apartment. Phone and car missing. Last known contact, a text message to her partner saying she was following a lead on the Westwood cold case. I took my time, fingers tracing the edges of each document, breathing in the familiar scent of paper and ink as the clock on the wall marked time with soft, rhythmic clicks. The precinct hummed with distant conversations and the gentle tapping of keyboards, the soundtrack to another day of piecing together the fragments of disrupted lives. Sarah had been investigating a 20-year-old cold case. A family of 4 found dead in their home on Westwood Drive in 1998. The parents and 2 children had been discovered in their beds, no signs of forced entry, no suspects ever identified. The case had gone cold decades ago, the files gathering dust in the archives until Sarah had requested them 3 weeks earlier. What had she found? What thread had she pulled that unraveled something hidden for all these years? I drove to her apartment that afternoon as rain began to mist the windshield, creating a soft, distorted view of the world outside. The key from her desk drawer slid into the lock with surprising ease. Inside, her space was meticulously organized, not a dish in the sink, bed made with hospital corners, books aligned perfectly on the shelf, but her dining table told a different story. Papers spread across the surface in what appeared to be chaos, but which I recognized as the careful arrangement of a detective building connections. Photos of the Westwood house from different angles, autopsy reports, interview transcripts from neighbors, and something unexpected, printouts of real estate listings circled in red ink. In the center of the table, a leather-bound journal lay open. Sarah's handwriting flowed across the pages in an elegant cursive that seemed from another time. I settled into the chair, the leather creaking softly beneath me, and began to read. The dreams started again last night, the same house, the same red door, the wallpaper peeling in the exact same pattern in the hallway. I can navigate it blindfolded now, 13 steps to the staircase, turn right at the landing, second door on the left. I know this house intimately, yet I've never set foot in it, until yesterday. The journal entries continued, describing her growing obsession with a recurring nightmare, a house she'd explored in her dreams for years. Then, 3 weeks ago, while browsing real estate listings for her cousin, she'd seen it. The exact house from her dreams, now for sale after sitting vacant for nearly 2 decades, the Westwood house. The coincidence had been too strong to ignore. She'd visited the property, describing how her hand trembled as she approached the red door. And inside, everything matched her dreams, the layout, the faded pattern on the wallpaper in the hallway, even the way the third stair creaked under her weight. Then came the detail that sent a chill through me despite the warmth of the apartment. In her dream, she always stopped at a particular window in the upstairs bedroom, running her fingers along the wooden sill. When she did this in the actual house, she found something carved into the wood, SL. Her initials. The journal entries grew more frantic after this discovery. She pulled the Westwood case files, finding inconsistencies in the original investigation. The family hadn't lived there long, just 6 months before their deaths. The previous owners had moved suddenly, leaving most of their furniture behind. Records showed the house had changed hands frequently, never occupied for more than a year since its construction in 1976. Her final entry dated the day before she disappeared. I found the connection. The dreams weren't warnings, they were memories. I lived in that house as a child, only for 3 months, but I was there. Mom never talks about that time, but I found the rental agreement in her storage unit today. We left suddenly in the middle of the night. Something happened there that she's never spoken of. I'm driving up to see her tonight. This ends now. The rain had intensified outside, drops tapping against the windows in an irregular rhythm as I closed the journal. The silence in the apartment felt heavier now, charged with unanswered questions. I glanced back at the real estate listings on the table, noting the address of the Westwood house. I called the precinct to let them know I was following a lead, then headed to my car. The GPS guided me through neighborhoods that grew progressively older, houses set further apart, trees arching over narrow streets. When I arrived at the address, the for sale sign swayed gently in the breeze, rain beating on its surface. The house stood silent, its red door like a wound against the gray siding. I approached slowly, awareness prickling along my spine. The key from the lockbox opened the door with a soft click, revealing a hallway with peeling wallpaper, exactly as described in Sarah's journal. 13 steps to the staircase, a right turn at the landing, second door on the left. In the bedroom, dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight. The room was empty save for a single chair facing the window, a chair that hadn't been mentioned in any of the case files or real estate photos. I approached the window, running my fingers along the sill just as Sarah had described. SL was carved there, the edges of the letters smoothed by time. But beside it, freshly carved, were 2 more sets of initials. MD, Sarah's mother, Diane Linden's maiden name, and beside that, JM. A sound behind me, the soft creak of weight on old floorboards. I turned slowly, heart keeping time with the rain against the roof. In the doorway stood an elderly woman, her face lined with years and secrets. "You found her journal," she said, voice barely above a whisper, just like she found mine. I recognized her from photos in the case file, Janet Miller, the detective who had originally investigated the Westwood murders in 1998. The detective who had retired immediately afterward. The detective whose initials, JM, were freshly carved into the windowsill. "Where is Sarah Linden?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the chill spreading through me. Janet Miller's eyes drifted to the window. She remembered too much, just like I did all those years ago, just like her mother before her. She stepped into the room, the floorboards sighing beneath her. This house calls to those who have lived within its walls. It shares its memories with us in dreams. And when we return, when we start asking questions, her voice trailed off. "What happened to the families who lived here?" I asked, though something in me already knew the answer. "The house protects itself," she said simply. "It always has, since 1976 when it was built on the site of the old asylum. 13 steps in the hallway, 1 for each of the patients who died in the fire. Their spirits never left." I thought of the 13 steps to the staircase that Sarah had mentioned in her journal. You won't find her, Janet continued, her eyes never leaving mine. Just like they never found the others. Just like they'll never find you now that you've been inside, now that you know. Thunder rolled outside as raindrops tapped against the window in what suddenly seemed like Morse code, an urgent message I couldn't quite decipher. Behind Janet, I could see the hallway stretching out, the wallpaper pattern shifting subtly, like breathing. You should leave now, she said, stepping aside, while you still can, before the house decides you've seen too much. I moved past her, feeling the temperature drop as I entered the hallway, 13 steps to the front door. I counted each one, wondering if Sarah had done the same on her final visit, wondering if I would remember them in my dreams tonight. Outside, the rain had stopped, though water still dripped from the eaves in a slow, deliberate rhythm. I looked back at the house with its red door, now knowing I would see it again when I closed my eyes. The case remains open. Sarah Linden is still missing. I requested a transfer the following week, but the dreams have already started. A house I've never visited, a red door, peeling wallpaper, and now a new detail, my own initials, waiting to be carved beside the others. Story 10. The old Polaroid held secrets long forgotten, capturing a birthday celebration from years gone by. Faces beamed with joy, candles flickering innocently in the background. But as the daughter sifted through the box of memories passed down to her, she noticed something peculiar. A figure lingered in the shadows, lurking behind the group. A man unknown, standing just beyond the reach of the candlelight. He didn't belong there. No one recalled his presence, yet with each photo he drew nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while sorting through her mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories unveiled a series of faded photographs documenting family gatherings of her youth. What should have been a comforting discovery turned into the inception of a haunting ordeal. In the initial photo, he was barely discernible, a dark silhouette on the fringes of her 7th birthday snapshot. The mysterious figure loomed near the glass door, features obscured, observing. In the subsequent image, taken moments later, he had crept inside. By the 3rd photo, he stood ominously behind her uncle, unnoticed by all captured in the frame. Trembling, Sarah reached out to her father, seeking answers. "Dad, who is this man haunting our family photos?" A heavy silence hung in the air before a sharp inhale broke it. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone except our kin." Her father's voice quivered in response. Detective Marcus Reed attentively listened as Sarah laid out the photos on his desk, the patter of rain against the window adding to the mysterious ambience of the moment. With weathered hands, he scrutinized each image, his gaze sharpening. "And no one recognized this individual?" he inquired, his tone a mix of neutrality and intrigue. "No one," Sarah affirmed, arranging the photos in chronological order. As the detective lined in, the progression of the figure's movement through the party unfolded before him. In the final photo, he loomed directly behind Sarah's younger self, a ghostly hand reaching out towards her just beyond the frame. "The photographer," Reed suggested, skepticism tainting his words. "My mother took these. She set the timer and stepped into the shot," Sarah explained. "Copies were made, a case file opened, and an investigation launched." Days passed as Reed contacted every living attendee of the party. No one recalled the mysterious man, no hired help, no uninvited guests, the property secluded, chosen for its privacy. Facial recognition software proved futile, the figure remained elusive, deliberately hidden in each photo. However, a breakthrough came when Sarah unearthed more photos from different family albums. The same figure, hauntingly present in the background of various gatherings across the years. A computer specialist enhanced the images, revealing hidden details: a scar, a ring, a faint reflection. Dental records provided the key. The man in the photos matched Robert Keller, a maintenance worker linked to unsolved child abductions years prior. Keller had access to rental properties where families gathered, where children vanished. The investigation tied together threads of cold cases, shining a light on the shadow that had lurked unseen for decades. Remains found near one of the properties confirmed a missing child's fate. The news arrived, a bittersweet resolution to a long-standing mystery. Staring at the last birthday photo, Sarah saw the figure once more, a phantom from the past finally unmasked by justice. The box of photos became evidence, a testament to hidden dangers that move through celebrations unseen, leaving only faint traces in frozen moments of time. The shadow in the family album had stepped into the light of truth, his presence acknowledged after years of obscurity. As Sarah closed the lid on the box, she knew that some secrets, once exposed, could never be forgotten. The haunting figure, captured in faded images, had finally met his reckoning, his legacy of darkness unraveling with each revealed photograph. Story 11. In the quiet of the night, a flicker danced across the baby monitor screen, a brief interruption in the digital feed. At first, the mother brushed it off as mere interference, a glitch in the system. But then the audio crackled and a voice, soft and eerie, whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill crept up her spine, her heartbeat quickening as fear gripped her heart. With trembling hands, she rushed to her son's room, the air heavy with tension. To her horror, the crib stood empty, a void where her precious Samuel should have been. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. The only anomaly glaring back at her was a stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its unblinking black eyes seemingly watching her every move. Rebecca's screams pierced the stillness of the night, echoing through the house until her voice grew raw with anguish. The neighbors, stirred from their slumber by her cries, wasted no time in summoning help. Emergency services arrived swiftly, finding Rebecca in the nursery, cradling the stuffed rabbit, her world shattered by the inexplicable disappearance of her 4-month-old son. The investigation that followed was shrouded in mystery. No signs of forced entry marred the home, the security system showing no breaches. The baby monitor footage offered only a glimpse of the chilling whisper and static that had unsettled Rebecca. How could someone enter, take a child, and vanish without a trace, leaving behind only a haunting voice in the darkness? Suspicion fell upon Rebecca, her past struggles with postpartum depression casting a shadow over her grief. Her husband, Daniel, returning from a business trip, found himself under scrutiny as well. A distance had grown between them since Samuel's birth, their strained relationship under the harsh glare of suspicion. A break in the case emerged when microscopic fibers, foreign to the household, were discovered on the nursery windowsill, a clue pointing to an intruder skilled in the art of climbing. Security footage from the neighborhood unveiled a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows that fateful night, leaving behind a trace of specialized footwear in the garden. As attention shifted from Rebecca to Daniel, unsettling revelations came to light. His newfound interest in rock climbing, the peculiar calluses on his hands, and a secret second family hidden from Rebecca. Financial records painted a damning picture, with a hefty life insurance policy taken out on Samuel and clandestine calls to an unknown number. The truth unraveled with each piece of evidence uncovered. The baby monitor, a silent witness to the night's events, had been tampered with, its signal manipulated to deceive. Following the digital trail, investigators stumbled upon a shocking revelation hidden in a residential basement. Samuel, alive and well, in the care of a woman named Elaine. Elaine's connection to Daniel, his first wife haunted by a past miscarriage, shed light on a twisted plot fueled by grief and betrayal. A plan meticulously crafted, a child claimed as rightfully hers, and a web of lies spun to conceal their dark intentions. In a courtroom hushed with anticipation, the truth echoed through the enhanced audio from the baby monitor, revealing more than whispered words. Daniel's distinctive cough, a damning echo from that fateful night, placed him at the heart of the abduction he denied. The trial concluded swiftly. Justice served as Daniel and Elaine faced the consequences of their actions. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. The case marked a turning point in how abductions were investigated, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the digital age. And so Samuel grew up unaware of the night he vanished, shielded from the darkness that once threatened to consume him. Rebecca, holding onto the stuffed rabbit as a silent witness to their ordeal, kept the truth locked away in her heart. The baby monitor, a silent sentinel, had borne witness to a tale of betrayal and redemption, its whispers echoing through the darkness, revealing a truth that transcended the bounds of reality. Story 12. The tale began for the new homeowners with a mere quirk, the crackling of the old intercom system in the dead of night. A relic from a bygone era, its wires and connections reconfigured but long abandoned to memory. Curiosity piqued one fateful evening when the husband, feeling a tug of intrigue, pressed the button. A whisper, barely audible, crackled through the speaker, sending a shiver down his spine. "Why did you come back?" The words hung in the air, unsettling in their mystery. Startled, he recoiled, hands trembling in the dim light. His wife, a silent witness behind him, softly murmured, "I never said that." The grand Victorian manor stood stoic amidst ancient oak trees, its aged facade concealing a modern interior brought back to life by Daniel and Meredith Parker, who had acquired the estate at an unexpectedly modest price. The real estate agent's unease during the showing hinted at hidden truths within the walls. The intercom system, a charming relic interconnecting all rooms, had sealed the deal for the couple enamored with history's embrace. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the property, the gravel crunching beneath the tires of her unmarked vehicle signaling her approach. The call had come in as a routine break-in report, but a subtle undercurrent in the dispatcher's voice hinted at a deeper narrative waiting to unfurl. Daniel Parker, a specter of his former self, welcomed the detective at the entrance, his pallor accentuated by the soft glow of the porch light. "It all began with the intercom," he recounted, leading Detective Reeves through the stately foyer. Static at first, then whispers, then complete sentences. My wife thought it was my imagination until she heard them too. In the living room, Meredith sat stiffly on an antique sofa, her hands tightly gripping a steaming mug left untouched. "We found something hidden behind the wall," she divulged without preamble. Daniel wanted to expand the pantry, and as he tore down the drywall, her voice wavered. Concealed within the wall, wrapped in decaying plastic, lay a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves, gloved hands delicately handling the fragile pages, uncovered the elegant yet frantic script of Alina, the journal's previous owner. Her words chronicled a growing fear of her husband Vincent's malevolent intentions. "The last entry dates back 30 years, Daniel elucidated. After that, silence. The former owners claimed they purchased the house from an elderly man who relocated to a retirement community. The investigation unveiled the past of Vincent and Alina Blackwood, former proprietors of the manor. Records indicated Vincent's swift sale of the property following Aliner's mysterious disappearance, devoid of any legal separation or financial trace. Detective Reeves marshaled a team to scrutinize the estate meticulously. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation. As the investigators breached the aged concrete, the truth emerged in the form of human remains. Forensic scrutiny confirmed the identity of a female in her 40s, bearing signs of fatal head trauma. A gold wedding band among the bones bore a poignant inscription, "To Elainer, my eternal love." The mounting evidence incriminated Vincent Blackwood swiftly. Now aged and residing in a care facility, his sharp mind comprehended the gravity of the accusations leveled against him. Confronted with irrefutable proof, his response sent chills through the detective's seasoned frame. "She wouldn't cease her prattle," Vincent intoned, his voice chillingly composed. "Always babbling through that accursed intercom, monitoring me, interrogating me. I disabled it, but she rewired it herself, adamant on reaching me wherever I roamed in the house." His gaze vacant, he added, "I only craved silence." In his admission, Vincent unraveled the meticulous web of deceit portraying Aliner's abandonment, fabricating postcards to neighbors from fictitious locales in her forged handwriting. For years, he inhabited the house, obliviously treading daily above the concrete concealing his late wife. The trial was succinct, with Vincent pleading guilty to the heinous act. The presiding judge underscored the premeditated nature of the crime and the decades of deceit that ensued. Daniel and Meredith eventually relinquished the estate, unable to linger in the shadows of its grim chronicle. Prior to their departure, they held a somber ceremony for Alina in the rejuvenated garden. The intercom system, harbinger of unsettling echoes, vanished during subsequent renovations by the new owners. Workers encountered whispers and static during its removal, attributing the phenomena to mere electrical interference. Before the Blackwood case file was archived, Detective Reeves revisited it one final time. As she sealed the manila folder, she contemplated how the house itself had transcended time to unveil its enigma. The scales of justice had finally tipped against Vincent Blackwood, courtesy of Aliner's resolute voice reverberating through the ages. Within local law enforcement circles, the case became synonymous with the house that answered back. Occasionally, Detective Reeves would pass by the property on her journey home. Though she never halted, she would slow her pace, window cracked open slightly, attuned to whispers carried on the evening breeze. Story 13. The gentle current whispered its lullaby that misty morning, the water shimmering like liquid glass, undisturbed and serene. The solitary fisherman, lost in his own thoughts, almost missed the sight of a weathered suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first glance, he dismissed it as a mere collection of discarded garments tossed aside by careless hands. But as he cautiously approached, the pungent aroma assaulted his senses, thick, suffocating, and unmistakable. The case was bound by chains, its edges kissed by rust from days spent exposed to the elements. When the authorities pried it open, they were met not by folded clothes, but by a haunting sight, a tangle of hair, fingers frozen in a silent grip, and nestled at the bottom, a haunting note, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer, a figure of poise amidst the grim tableau, delicately pressed her handkerchief to her nose as she surveyed the scene before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, with dark locks and pallid skin now marred by the touch of water, lay in silent repose. The diligent medical examiner meticulously documented every detail before the body was gently lifted from its watery grave. Yet what struck Mercer amidst the chilling discovery was not the brutal method of disposal, but the eerie reverence with which the victim had been adorned, manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in garments of opulence. She was not dispatched here, Mercer murmured softly, her gaze fixed upon the muddy shoreline where the water whispered secrets of its own. She was arranged, presented. The victim was soon identified as Catherine Walsh, a prominent real estate agent renowned for her dealings in high-end properties. Divorced, childless, she resided in solitude within an affluent neighborhood. Colleagues spoke of her as ambitious, meticulous, and enigmatic. Her absence was first noted by her assistant, who raised the alarm when Catherine failed to appear at a crucial showing for wealthy clients. She would never miss such an opportunity, the assistant insisted during interrogation. That sale would have been the pinnacle of her career. As investigators combed through Catherine's impeccably curated home, a sense of unease settled upon them. Every facet of her abode exuded perfection: furniture meticulously arranged, surfaces devoid of even a speck of dust. The refrigerator housed neatly organized meals labeled and dated. Her closet, a symphony of colors, shoes cradled in protective sheaths. Yet a subtle anomaly lurked within her home office, a drawer slightly ajar. Within it, a leather-bound journal lay in quiet repose. The final entry bore witness to a chilling truth. He's watching again. Same car, different plates. A delve into Walsh's digital footprint unveiled a curious pattern: dozens of messages from unknown sources, echoing the same ominous refrain, "I see your perfection," each missive sent at an exact moment on disparate days. Her browsing history hinted at a quest for security systems and self-defense mechanisms. Mercer, connecting these cryptic dots with the macabre display before her, whispered to her partner, "Our assailant is no mere brute. This is a ritual, a meticulously choreographed act of malevolence." The breakthrough materialized from an unexpected quarter. A local pawnshop proprietor identified Catherine's distinctive emerald necklace among the pawned goods, a talisman stripped from her in her final moments. The culprit was a familiar face: Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker with a penchant for blending into the background. Surveillance footage documented his repeated visits to Catherine's residence, sometimes with his maintenance cart in tow, other times surreptitiously. Always during her absences, as she showcased properties to discerning clients. A search of Linden's modest abode unearthed a chilling reality. Walls adorned with surreptitiously captured images of Catherine and other women, all sharing a striking resemblance, all unaware of their violation, some portraits defaced with crimson slashes. Catherine was but one amongst a twisted pantheon. Behind a disguised panel in his closet, investigators stumbled upon a shrine to his victims. Personal effects meticulously arranged: a lock of hair, stained tissues, keys, and receipts. Each collection accompanied by a meticulous journal detailing their lives, their quirks, their vulnerabilities. The interrogation room turned frigid as Linden was brought before the law. Clad in an appearance of order, his voice devoid of emotion, he confessed, "They were flawed. They paraded as paragons, but I saw their deceit. Catherine's desk harbored chaos. Her lipstick bore a smudge. Her perfection was a falsehood." The pursuit of the other victims hinted at in his cryptic note led investigators to desolate locales where two more suitcases surfaced. Within each, a somber echo of Catherine women akin in appearance, real estate agents who peddled an illusion of unerring precision. During his trial, Linden sat impassive, his visage an enigmatic mask, as the prosecution laid bare his meticulous schemes. He had shadowed these women for months, imbibing their routines, infiltrating their sanctuaries, dissecting their lives. And when the time came, he sought to rectify what he perceived as imperfections, tending to their visages, clothing them in finery, before extinguishing their light. The families of the fallen bore silent witness as the gavel pronounced a lifetime of seclusion for Linden, a sentence devoid of reprieve. For Detective Mercer, the case was officially concluded, yet shadows of doubt lingered. What specter haunted Lyndon's soul, compelling him to seek out these particular women? What blemish within himself did he strive to erase through his grisly art? The river, a silent witness to the horrors enacted upon its banks, continued its meandering journey downstream, carrying with it the detritus of the past. But in the precinct upon Mercer's desk lay the chilling remnants of Lyndon's madness, a stark reminder that beneath the veneer of normalcy, within the confines of seemingly ordinary lives, darkness may lurk. And in the quietest corners, the most treacherous predators may lie in wait, hidden in plain sight, watching for the slightest flaw to expose itself to the world. Story 14, The Forbidden Doll House. She never cared for venturing into the attic, but when the storm ruptured the roof, she was left with no alternative. The attic was a realm of forgotten relics, cloaked in a shroud of dust and cobwebs. Nestled in the deepest corner rested an ancient dollhouse, exquisitely detailed with its minuscule furnishings placed with meticulous care. Yet as she gazed inside, a knot twisted in her stomach. The figures within were not dolls, but tiny, intricately carved replicas of her family. Each figure meticulously positioned, mirroring the exact postures of her family downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to represent her stood by the attic portal. Rebecca Morgan ran her finger along the dollhouse's roof, sensing the groove where the petite wooden figure stood. The revelation sent a shiver down her spine, unrelated to the chilling draft whispering through the attic. This dollhouse had no place here. This wasn't her childhood abode, but a rental dwelling the family had recently moved into. The tale unfurled with Rebecca's urgent plea to law enforcement. Officers descended upon the suburban abode to find a family in turmoil, gathered in their living space, adamantly refusing to ascend the stairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their distress as a potential prank or the fanciful musings of a family acclimating to a new residence. The precision was what struck me, Detective Harmon reminisced later. Each miniature figurine captured a distinct essence of every family member: the father's receding hairline, the teenage son's hoodie, even the minuscule birthmark on the mother's hand. The inquiry veered when forensic experts uncovered fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match those of any family member. More unsettling were the microscopic cameras concealed within the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated surveillance system nestled beneath the dollhouse. Examination of the Morgan family's movements in the days prior unveiled a disquieting pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse did not just mirror their evening whereabouts, they replicated precise postures from various days, hinting at a prolonged observation of their habits. We realized this wasn't merely a case of stalking, elucidated Detective Harmon. The perpetrator exhibited an intensity of fixation seldom seen in criminal psychology. A concealed entrance to the basement was unearthed, camouflaged behind a false pantry wall. Inside, investigators stumbled upon a rudimentary living space, with signs indicating someone had dwelled there even before the Morgans arrived. Food remnants, water receptacles, and a sleeping sack hinted that the intruder had stealthily resided beneath the family for weeks. The absence of forced entry confounded investigators. Property records unveiled that the house had stood uninhabited for nearly a year prior to the Morgans' occupancy. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had both deceased within months of each other. Their son had overseen the estate sale and subsequent rental. Conversations with neighbors yielded sparse insights. A lone elderly lady mentioned sporadically spotting lights in the dwelling during its vacancy. I assumed it was the realtors showcasing the property, she recounted to investigators. Never once did I fathom that someone might be dwelling there without consent. Breakthrough came through digital forensics. Scrutinizing the surveillance system linked to the miniature cameras, analysts traced the data to an external server via an IP address. The trail led investigators to a modest apartment across town. There, they found walls adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and previous house occupants. Journal entries meticulously outlined the daily routines of each family member. Most spine-chilling was the discovery of a workshop teeming with half-finished dollhouses, each representing distinct homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the former homeowners. Financial records disclosed mounting debts post his parents' passing. Instead of selling the house outright, he fashioned the covert living space, lingering there while collecting rent from unsuspecting tenants. The dollhouse served as his command center, expounded the forensic psychologist. Each figure symbolized someone under his scrutiny. The figure of Rebecca by the attic door wasn't a threat, it was his way of acknowledging her unearthing of his surveillance network. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed as he elucidated his rationale. They resided in my house, slumbered in my parents' chamber. I needed assurance that they were treating it with reverence. When probed about the arranged figures, he merely stated, I wanted them to realize I was constantly watching. The psychological evaluation unveiled a convoluted case of possessive delusion. Wells grappled to cope with losing his childhood abode and devised an intricate system to maintain dominion over it. The dollhouse metamorphosed into his medium of controlling both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never revisited the dwelling. Rebecca later reflected on the most haunting instance, not the discovery of the dollhouse itself, but the realization it signified. Someone had been observing us all along, measuring our lives, transforming us into playthings. The genuine horror was not the dollhouse, it was recognizing that in his mind, we were mere puppets to be placed and surveyed. Wells faced multiple charges of stalking, intrusion of privacy, illicit surveillance, and unlawful entry. The case prompted a reevaluation of real estate disclosure statutes concerning deaths on properties and the obligation of agents to ensure residences are adequately vacated before new occupants move in. During his sentencing, the judge underscored the profound violation the Morgan family had endured. You didn't just intrude into their home, you violated their sense of security and independence. You watched their most intimate moments and replicated them for your gratification. What chills criminologists is the duration Wells could have persisted undetected had Rebecca not stumbled upon the dollhouse. Analysis of his diaries hinted that he had been clandestinely residing within homes for nearly 2 years, traversing from one property to another, crafting dollhouses of each scrutinized family. The Morgan family eventually settled in a distant abode, yet Rebecca confessed in her victim impact statements that she still inspects closets and hidden recesses routinely. She purged their new residence of all dollhouses and miniatures. Some days I still sense eyes upon me, she disclosed. I ponder if somewhere, someone is still orchestrating a diminutive version of me within an undiscovered dollhouse. Story 15, the aged apartment held secrets within its walls, pipes that groaned in the dead of night, floorboards that whispered tales of bygone days. The new tenant, a young woman named Sarah, sensed a presence beyond the ordinary. The footsteps she heard above her were too deliberate, too methodical for a building supposedly empty. Perched on the top floor, she puzzled over the enigma of those slow, measured footfalls that traversed the ceiling each night. One evening, driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, Sarah tentatively struck the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased abruptly, plunging the room into a heavy silence. Then in the stillness, a single knock echoed back from within the ceiling itself. A chill crept down Sarah's spine, but she kept the unsettling encounter to herself, attributing it to the settling of old timbers or perhaps a stray creature roaming the hidden spaces above. As the nights passed, the footsteps persisted, a haunting rhythm that danced above her head, refusing to be ignored. Sarah resorted to cranking up the volume of her television, burying herself under layers of sound to drown out the eerie cadence that traced unseen paths overhead in the darkness. Detective Morris was drawn into the mystery of the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace while attending to routine repairs. Behind a section of drywall near Sarah's unit, a narrow passage unfurled, a secret corridor absent from the building's blueprints. Illuminated by a flashlight's beam, the hidden enclave revealed a makeshift living quarters, discarded food wrappers, empty water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small, tattered notebook. The building's superintendent wasted no time in alerting the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker visibly shaken, muttering about someone living within the walls, someone watching. The discovery of the notebook sent shivers down their spines as they delved into its eerie contents. Detailed observations of Sarah Coleman filled the pages, her daily routines, her interactions, her habits meticulously documented. The neat handwriting gradually devolved into frantic scribbles, strange symbols scrawled in the margins. The final entry spoke of a subject who no longer responded to the unseen observer's signals, a defiance that irked the unseen watcher. "No one ignores me," the chilling words declared. Forensic teams meticulously combed the crawlspace, unearthing fingerprints that eluded identification in any known database. A complex network of hidden passages intertwined within the building's structure, some dating back decades, weaving a sinister web that connected 5 separate apartments, culminating in discreet peepholes concealed within Sarah Coleman's unit. Interviews with current residents yielded little of note, the typical apartment noises masking the sinister truth lurking within the walls. Former tenants, however, painted a different picture, whispers of being watched, of inexplicable movements in the dead of night. 3 previous occupants of Sarah's apartment shared tales of unease, one fleeing after a mere fortnight, their experiences relegated to silence out of fear of sounding paranoid. A breakthrough in the case surfaced with the discovery of microscopic blood spatter in one of the hidden passages. DNA analysis linked the traces to Martin Weaver, a past resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior, his disappearance a cold case lost in the annals of time. Martin had dwelled directly below Sarah's abode, his fate entwined with the dark secrets lurking within the building's walls. Detective Morris revisited Martin's enigmatic vanishing, unearthing a pattern of unsettling behavior surrounding a former tenant named Edward, a recluse who had inhabited the unit above Martin, a man fixated on silence and seclusion. Edward's nomadic existence, marked by abrupt departures and a trail of unexplained disappearances, cast a shadow of dread over the investigation. A neighbor from Edward's past residences recalled his intensity, his incessant need for solitude. Property records hinted at a secluded cabin nestled in remote terrain, a sanctuary for his twisted pursuits. When investigators breached the cabin's walls, a chilling tableau awaited them: photographs of unsuspecting residents, intricate maps of building structures, and journals detailing the meticulous observation of his specimens. A corkboard adorned with missing persons reports bore witness to Edward's malevolent handiwork, his legacy etched in blood and fear. Cadaver dogs led the authorities to freshly disturbed earth behind the cabin, unearthing a macabre trail of graves concealing the remains of his victims. As forensic experts toiled to identify the fallen, Detective Morris's thoughts drifted back to Sarah's apartment, where a new revelation awaited. Though the hidden passages had been sealed, whispers of unseen movements persisted among the residents. During the installation of enhanced security measures, a chilling find emerged: a second notebook nestled in a forgotten nook where wall met ceiling. Its cryptic message hinted at a new lair evading capture and scrutiny. The ominous sketch of Sarah's dwelling, a crimson passage marked in foreboding red ink, foretold of impending danger. Officers raced to Sarah's sanctuary, only to find it abandoned, the trappings of daily life left behind in a silent plea for help. A message etched onto the bathroom mirror, obscured by steam, bore a cryptic directive: look up. Above the shower, a removed ceiling panel beckoned to a hidden realm, a sinister echo of Edward's presence that lingered unseen. The hunt for Edward Mercer, the elusive architect of terror, presses on, his shadow stretching across state lines in a tapestry of vanished souls. Sarah Coleman remains a ghostly enigma, her fate intertwined with a malevolent force that lurks within the hidden recesses of rented abodes. The legacy of Edward's clandestine network haunts Detective Morris's nights, a specter of dread that lingers long after the case has closed, a reminder of the unseen eyes that watch and wait in the darkness. Story 16. The worn wooden plank shifted ever so slightly beneath her weight, catching her attention with a soft creak. Intrigued, she knelt down, her fingers tracing the edges of the loose board, sensing a hidden secret beneath the surface. With cautious determination, she lifted the boards, revealing a dark, narrow space that lay concealed beneath the foundation of her new home. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she made out the shapes within the hidden chamber: a mattress, a chair, and in the shadowy corner, a tattered notebook. Her name, written repeatedly across its pages, sent a shiver down her spine. Detective Morgan Reed observed Sarah Coleman's stunned expression as she peered into the darkness below. It wasn't just the discovery of a hidden room that unsettled Sarah. It was the violation of her newfound sanctuary, the intrusion of something dark and sinister into what should have been a fresh start. "Leave everything untouched," Detective Reed's voice, calm yet authoritative, broke through the silence. Her flashlight pierced the shadows, illuminating a chilling sight: the walls adorned with surveillance photographs of Sarah, capturing her every move, her every interaction. A disturbing shrine of obsession hidden beneath her very feet. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of the reclusive Walter Green, a man who had passed away with no known kin. The property had stood empty for months, its secrets undisturbed until now. The charming exterior had masked the chilling reality concealed within its walls. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice barely above a whisper. "The neighbors said he was a recluse. I was told that basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report stated." Crime scene investigators descended upon the house, their presence echoing through the rooms as they meticulously documented every detail. The evidence they unearthed painted a disturbing picture, a web of obsession carefully woven over years, all centered around Sarah. Forensic analysis revealed Walter Green's fingerprints scattered throughout the hidden chamber, a testament to his relentless fixation. The timeline pieced together by investigators unveiled a haunting truth: Walter had been watching Sarah for years, his presence lurking in the shadows of her everyday life. The level of fixation suggests escalation, the department psychologist somberly remarked. This hidden room indicates a disturbing depth of planning and intent. Detective Reed's investigation took an unexpected turn when she uncovered a connection to Walter's former colleague, a man haunted by the knowledge of Walter's fixation on Sarah. The revelation of Walter's unsettling proclamations about Sarah sent a chill down Reed's spine. A key found in Walter's workplace locker led them to a storage unit, the eerie replica of Sarah's previous life meticulously recreated within its walls. The mannequin, the furniture, the calendar marked with a foreboding date, all pieces of a twisted puzzle hinting at a dark culmination. Walter's troubled past, his history of delusion and obsession, came to light. The shadows of his past had resurfaced, fixating on Sarah with a dangerous intensity that bordered on madness. As Sarah stood in the empty house, her sense of security shattered, she made a decision to leave, to escape the lingering specter of Walter's obsession. The house was sold, the hidden room sealed off, but the memories lingered, a reminder of the darkness that had once lurked beneath the floorboards. The case closed with Walter's demise, labeled as stalking with intent. Sarah, now a survivor, embarked on a new chapter, haunted by the knowledge of how close she had come to a fate she couldn't bear to imagine. Life carried on, the house passed into new hands, its dark secret buried beneath layers of fresh paint and new beginnings. But for those who knew the truth, the tale of the hidden room beneath the floor remained a cautionary tale, a whispered warning of the dangers that can lie hidden, waiting to ensnare the unwary in their chilling embrace. Story 17. The tale of the mysterious house unfolded like a delicate dance between reality and the unknown. Michael and Sarah Klein, the new inhabitants, never anticipated the secrets hidden within the walls of their Victorian-era home. What began as a simple desire to uncover the source of a water stain soon spiraled into a journey of discovery that blurred the lines between past and present. As they peeled away the layers of wallpaper, a name emerged, Alina Winters, scrawled in ink, repeated endlessly in a frantic, uneven script. This name, unfamiliar yet haunting, sent shivers down their spines. Who was Alina Winters, and why was her name etched so fervently into the very fabric of the house? Their investigation led them down a winding path of intrigue and mystery. Online searches revealed a missing persons case from decades ago. With a startling revelation, the woman in the photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to Margaret Cavendish, the previous owner who had sold them the house. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place, painting a picture of obsession and tragedy. Alina Winters, a young woman who vanished without a trace, and Margaret Cavendish, a woman with a hidden past and a web of secrets. As Michael and Sarah delved deeper into the history of their home, they unearthed a tangled web of identities and deception. Margaret Cavendish, it seemed, was not who she claimed to be. The discovery of hidden identification cards and a secret compartment beneath the floorboards only added to the enigma. But the true revelation came with the matching of DNA and fingerprints, a chilling connection between Alina Winters and a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge. Rebecca's fractured mind had created a complex tapestry of alternate personalities, one of which had taken on the guise of Alina, leading to a tragic chain of events. The walls of the house bore witness to the turmoil within Rebecca's mind, serving as both confession and prison for her fractured psyche. The scrawled name of Alina Winters was a desperate attempt to cling to reality, a poignant reminder of a life lost to obsession and madness. As forensic teams unearthed the long-buried truth from beneath the garden, the case reached its unsettling conclusion. Aliner's remains were discovered, bringing closure to a decades-old mystery, and Rebecca Eldridge, masquerading as Margaret Cavendish, was finally apprehended, her elaborate charade unraveling in the face of undeniable evidence. For Michael and Sarah, their dream home had transformed into a haunting tale of true crime, forever marked as the house where the walls whispered secrets of a long-forgotten tragedy. And as the night settled over the quiet neighborhood, the house stood silent, its walls holding the echoes of a story that would never be forgotten. A story of mystery, obsession, and the chilling depths of the human mind. Story 18, The Enigmatic Echo. She cleared the mist from the mirror, peering into her own reflection. Everything seemed normal at first glance, her face, her attire all unchanged. Yet a sense of unease crept in as she continued to gaze. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own making. And when she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing her. This unsettling incident marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's perplexing journey. Residing in a modest apartment within a serene suburb, Rebecca led a solitary life. Known for her precision and reserved nature, she worked diligently as a data analyst, adhering strictly to routine. Her unassuming existence gave no hint of the inexplicable events that would soon unfold, gripping both investigators and the local community in a web of mystery. Initially, subtle disturbances caught Rebecca's attention. Trifling objects in her home appeared subtly shifted, no items missing, just rearranged. A coffee mug placed on a different shelf, books rearranged, her toothbrush in an unfamiliar spot. She brushed off these anomalies as mere lapses, attributing them to fatigue from long hours spent scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh office lighting. Detective Marion Shaw was informed of Rebecca's concerns after a series of such incidents had transpired. The initial evaluation suggested a mental health issue rather than criminal activity, given the absence of tangible evidence. Shaw noted the complaint but categorized it among the less urgent cases, deeming it a matter best suited for mental health resources. The turning point arrived with the enigmatic incident involving the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the authorities, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflections seemed to move independently, casting an eerie sensation of being under constant observation. This time, she had proof a security camera aimed at her front door. The footage unveiled a chilling revelation that left even seasoned officers unsettled. In the grainy video, Rebecca departed for work in the morning, only for an identical figure to enter her apartment 20 minutes later using a key. Forensic scrutiny of the footage ruled out tampering or digital manipulation. The intruder mirrored Rebecca's movements, attire, and even carried her distinctive leather bag. However, corroborative evidence from her workplace security system indicated Rebecca's presence at her office across town during the same time frame. Detective Shaw labeled the situation as a doppelganger scenario, positing that someone had meticulously studied Rebecca to replicate her with uncanny precision. The investigation deepened as fingerprints within the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA traces were unearthed. Neighbors attested to witnessing nothing out of the ordinary, merely observing Rebecca's routine comings and goings. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, recounted a peculiar encounter when greeting Rebecca upon her return home, receiving no response, an unusual occurrence that raised mild concern but not alarm. As disturbances escalated, Rebecca diligently documented each anomaly. Mundane changes in her living space multiplied, with food vanishing from her refrigerator, unauthorized searches appearing on her computer, and unsettling selfies surfacing on her phone, bearing subtle discrepancies in her expression. Expressing her escalating distress to Detective Shaw during their subsequent meeting, Rebecca voiced her fears of descending into madness or being manipulated into believing so. A breakthrough occurred when a pattern emerged in the surveillance footage the doppelganger only infiltrated during Rebecca's predetermined absences for scheduled activities, such as therapy sessions or routine errands. A forensic psychologist theorized that they were dealing with a fixation case, a person fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, potentially aiming to supplant her entirely. The focus narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had displayed erratic behavior before her dismissal. Lily's obsession with Rebecca, evident through unsettling emails and comments on their similarities, raised suspicions. Upon obtaining a search warrant for Lily's residence, investigators uncovered a chilling reality. A room within Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom, adorned with countless unauthorized photographs documenting Rebecca's daily life. The closet housed replicas of Rebecca's attire, alongside meticulous observations on her habits, mannerisms, and preferences. Alarming practice videos showcased Lily mimicking Rebecca's every move with increasing precision. Rebecca, confronted with this disturbing evidence, realized the extent of Lily's fixation. She wasn't merely imitating, but aiming to erase her identity. Advanced equipment for replicating keys and electronic access cards, coupled with detailed records of Rebecca's schedule, unveiled Lily's meticulous surveillance strategy. Yet Lily's ultimate motive remained elusive, concealed within cryptic journal entries that blurred the line between reality and obsession. Before authorities could apprehend Lily, she vanished, leaving behind a scene of abrupt departure. A nationwide hunt ensued, with Rebecca placed under continuous protection in a secure location. Weeks passed with no sign of Lily, until a startling revelation surfaced. Rebecca was sighted entering her former workplace despite being under protective custody. Security footage confirmed an identical figure accessing the building using Rebecca's credentials, perusing her office files before departing. The realization dawned that Lily had executed her plan, assuming Rebecca's identity while the real Rebecca remained hidden. The case lingered unresolved, with Lily evading capture and Rebecca forging a new identity in seclusion. Detective Shaw, haunted by the chilling events, kept a photograph of the two eerily similar women on her desk, Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters. She often contemplated their features, searching for the subtle disparities that set them apart. Reflecting on the ordeal, she imparted a sobering lesson to her colleagues, emphasizing the sanctity of identity and the harrowing consequences of its theft, a reminder that one's essence is not merely what is seen, but what is safeguarded vigilantly, for it can be coveted by those who seek to merge with it and vanish in the process. Story 19. Once upon a time, there was a woman preparing to welcome her new baby into the world. She felt a strong urge to repaint the nursery, where the walls bore a faded blue hue that seemed to hold secrets within its layers. As she applied the first coat of fresh white paint, something unexpected emerged from beneath the surface. A message, initially faint but gradually becoming clear, was revealed. Don't let it hear you. Her heart skipped a beat, and as she took a step back, she noticed something eerie. Tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, too high on the wall for any child to have reached. This peculiar discovery in the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the beginning of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home at a remarkably low price, unaware of its dark past. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the house, her notebook poised for investigation. A pregnant woman, noticeably fatigued and wearing paint-splattered overalls, opened the door. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights. She recounted finding the mysterious message and handprints, mentioning the abrupt departure of the previous owners who left in the dead of night with only essential belongings. Walking through the historic home, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed on the aged floorboards. In the nursery, she studied the half-painted wall where the unsettling message and handprints still lingered as a chilling reminder. Digging into property records back at the precinct, the detective uncovered a disturbing pattern of frequent ownership changes over the years, coupled with unsettling child welfare reports involving whispers and unseen presences haunting the children. Further investigation led Detective Klein to the house's former owner, Eleanor Blackwood, a widow who had run an orphanage on the property decades ago. Tragic newspaper clippings hinted at the disappearance of 5 children under her care, their fate shrouded in mystery. The detective visited past residents, piecing together a narrative of inexplicable events that plagued each family, all culminating in the same unsettling message left behind on the nursery walls. A breakthrough came when ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the basement floor, 5 child-sized shapes hidden beneath the concrete. Upon excavation, the grim truth was unveiled, 5 sets of small remains arranged in a circle, confirming the tragic end of the orphaned children who had vanished years ago. As the investigation delved deeper, a forensic examination of the nursery walls under luminol illumination unveiled countless handprints, invisible to the naked eye, hinting at the desperate attempts of the trapped children to escape their fate. Eleanor Blackwood's journals revealed her twisted belief in harnessing the children's energy to prolong her own life, a sinister motive that led to their untimely demise. With the closure of the case and the proper burial of the victims, the house stood silent, its walls echoing with the ghosts of the past. The nursery was demolished, yet whispers persisted within the debris, chilling the workers to the core. The pregnant couple chose never to return, leaving the house condemned a cold, empty shell holding onto its dark secrets, forever imprinted with the haunting handprints of innocent souls lost to a tragic history. And as Detective Klein archived the case, she kept a solemn reminder, a photograph capturing the glowing handprints in the darkness, a poignant symbol of crimes that transcend time, leaving an indelible mark on the world. Story 20, the listing by the realtor made no mention of a basement. The blueprints held no clues to its existence. Yet as the family peeled back the worn carpet, they uncovered a concealed door. A weathered handle, weighed down by time, beckoned to them. It took the combined effort of 3 to wrench it open. A musty breath of air greeted them, heavy with the aroma of damp soil. The stairs descended into shadowy depths. Expecting a storage space, they were met with a solitary chair, bathed in the sway of a single light bulb above, and on the wall behind, a series of photographs depicting them, images captured from within the confines of their own home. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban residence amidst the winter's early darkness, where skeletal trees loomed against the chill sky. The aged, 2-story house with its time-worn facade and creaking floors exuded a charm of character and history, or so they had believed. Little did they anticipate the extent of history entrenched within the walls, or the violent collision it would make with their present. Arriving at the property, Detective Sarah Connors and her partner found the crime scene unit already at work, encircling the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice had relayed the shocking discovery beneath their living room floor. "We must document everything before anyone else ventures below," Connors directed, donning latex gloves with practiced ease. The camera's flashes punctuated the dim stairwell as the forensic team meticulously captured the scene. The wooden steps groaned beneath their weight, The basement, compact in size akin to a standard bedroom, boasted concrete walls painted a somber gray. A lone chair stood anchored in the room's center. Overhead, the stark bulb cast sharp shadows that danced with an unseen breeze. However, it was the line of photographs that seized their attention, 37 snapshots meticulously arranged in chronological order. "These date back almost 4 weeks," remarked Connor's partner, noting the timestamps inscribed on the photo backs. "Look here, Mrs. Mercer asleep on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the kids in their rooms." Despite an extensive investigation, no signs of forced entry surfaced, no broken windows or tampered locks. The security system had remained dormant. Nothing had been pilfered. Only their privacy had been breached, along with any semblance of security the family once held. Tracing back through the house's ownership history revealed unsettling truths. Blueprints had been altered between sales, permits filed then rescinded, inspection reports cloaked in redactions. The pivotal breakthrough arrived during an interview with the contractor who had renovated the house 7 years prior. His color drained at the sight of the basement photos. "That room is non-existent," he vehemently insisted, hands quivering. "I stripped that place down to the bones. There was no basement, no door. Nothing beneath the living room but earth and concrete." Extraction of data from a hidden memory card within the light fixture unveiled a trove of additional images depicting not only the Mercers but past occupants as well. Children slumbering, parents bickering, intimate moments, mundane routines, all captured by an unseen intruder. The case took a darker turn upon the recovery of audio files secreted within a weatherproof box buried in the basement's corner. Conversations from the master bedroom, kitchen, living room, all recorded with a clarity that suggested sophisticated surveillance equipment concealed throughout the house, yet none had been initially uncovered. "We must dismantle every wall," Connors urged, her tone laced with urgency. "Inspect every air vent, light fixture, electrical outlet. Whoever is responsible has been observing these families for years." Beyond the photograph wall, investigators unearthed a narrow passageway leading to a monitoring station. A desk, a chair, a laptop linked to an array of wireless cameras, and a journal, its pages brimming with meticulous observations on each family that had dwelled within the house, their routines, their schedules, their disputes, their vulnerabilities. The script mirrored that of the property's original builder, a man named Edward Kelvin, who had purportedly perished during the house's construction, a detail that grew increasingly dubious as the probe unfolded. No trace of a death certificate, no record of funeral arrangements. Edward Kelvin had simply vanished from public records. The journal's final entries spiraled into madness. Phrases like "they never look down" and "they never see me" recurred with unsettling frequency. The concluding page bore a chilling sentence: "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint analysis confirmed the detective's suspicions. Edward Kelvin had never vacated the house he had erected. Instead, he had retreated into its concealed recesses, crafting a maze of observation points from which to monitor the families who believed they resided in solitude. The search for Kelvin spanned 3 days, culminating in the discovery of his emaciated form curled within a crawlspace amidst the second-floor bedrooms. His eyes, unaccustomed to direct light, blinked in the glare of the flashlights. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as characters in his personal drama. He viewed them with an aloof detachment, akin to a scientist observing specimens. He had never physically intruded upon them, never absconded with their possessions, never directly interfered with their lives. He had merely watched, recorded, documented. "They welcomed me in," he murmured to investigators, his voice soft and rational. "They signed the deeds, they became mine. A psychological evaluation concluded that Kelvin suffered severe delusions, convinced that he was the custodian of the house rather than an interloper. The families were mere transient guests in what he considered his eternal abode. The Mercers chose never to return to the property. Like their predecessors, they abandoned their belongings, salvaging only what fit in their suitcases. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the house sat vacant. The trial exposed the vast expanse of Kelvin's surveillance network, secret chambers accessible solely through crawl spaces, observation points integrated into the very framework meticulously planned prior to the house's construction. The dwelling had been conceived as an apparatus for observation from its inception, its inhabitants unwitting participants in Kelvin's obsessive documentation. Upon the jury's verdict, Kelvin exhibited no reaction. He had already withdrawn into the recesses of his mind's architecture, where he could still traverse unseen through the house's corridors, now existent solely in memory. The property met its demise, razed to the ground, its earth excavated and replaced. Yet, for the families that had resided within, the violation endured. They found themselves haunted not by what was taken from them, but by what lay concealed, watching, listening, recording their most intimate moments from within the walls they had trusted to safeguard them. At times, in hushed solitude, they would cast furtive glances at air vents, light fixtures, the junctures where walls met ceilings, pondering whether they were truly alone now, pondering if they ever truly had been. Story 21. In the stillness of the night, a pocket dial echoed through the airwaves, a mere whisper of static and muffled sounds. The operator, on the brink of dismissing it as a mundane error, hesitated as a voice suddenly pierced through the void. A woman's voice tinged with frantic urgency, barely audible yet filled with fear. "He's here." And then an eerie silence descended, swallowing the words whole. The mysterious call originated from a forgotten number linked to an empty house, a relic of the past left untouched by the hands of time for countless years. There were no traces of forced entry, no signs of disturbances within the abandoned abode. Yet amidst the layers of neglect and dust that shrouded the kitchen, an otherworldly sight awaited those who dared to unravel its mystery. The phone, perched upon the counter, its screen eerily aglow. The call had materialized mere moments ago, a phantom reaching out from the shadows of the past. Detective Morgan Reed, haunted by the inexplicable whisper that lingered in the air, found herself drawn to press the playback button repeatedly, each repetition only deepening the enigmatic aura that surrounded the call. The abandoned property, once belonging to the Sullivan family before tragedy befell them, now stood as a ghostly testament to the secrets it harbored. The phone, a relic of the deceased daughter Catherine Sullivan, told a tale that defied logic and reason. A deceased woman's phone, making calls from a place frozen in time, a paradoxical enigma that defied all rational explanation. The forensic team, tasked with deciphering the enigmatic puzzle, found themselves at a loss, grasping at straws in a realm where the laws of the living seemed to falter. As the investigation unfolded, unveiling layers of darkness that shrouded the truth, Detective Reed and her partner, Detective Walsh, delved deeper into the enigmatic tapestry woven by the spectral call. The recording, a mere 11 seconds of static, breath, and whispered words, became the focal point of their quest for answers. Voice analysis, a fragile thread connecting the past to the present, whispered of a truth that defied the boundaries of mortality. The spectral voice, identified as Catherine Sullivan's with eerie accuracy, echoed through the veil of time, a spectral echo of a life cut short. The timestamp, a grim reminder of fate's cruel hand, marked the call's occurrence at the precise moment of Catherine's untimely demise. a chilling synchronicity that sent shivers down the spines of all who dared to unravel the mystery. Interviews with those who had known Catherine revealed fragments of a life torn asunder by shadows unseen. Her father, now a mere shadow of his former self, bore the weight of a past that refused to be buried. Her mother, a solitary figure haunted by the echoes of a daughter's desperate plea, clung to the memories that lingered like ghosts in the night. The truth, a dagger poised to strike at the heart of darkness, lay hidden within the pages of a journal unearthed from the depths of time. Catherine's words, etched in ink, bore witness to a love twisted into malice, a bond shattered by the hands of betrayal. The final entry, a chilling testament to a soul on the brink of oblivion, spoke of fear, of a looming shadow that threatened to consume all in its path. Mark Jennings, the specter of Catherine's past, stood at the center of the storm, his facade crumbling under the weight of accusation. The journal, a damning testament to his sins, laid bare the truth that he sought to bury in shadows. The revelations unearthed by relentless pursuit of justice painted a portrait of a man consumed by darkness, a predator cloaked in the guise of a savior. The buried phone, a silent witness to a crime long concealed, whispered of a truth that could no longer be ignored. The forensic evidence, a tapestry woven from the strands of deceit, painted a picture of a life extinguished by a hand that sought to erase all traces of guilt. The truth, a beacon of light in a sea of shadows, guided the hands of justice towards a reckoning long overdue. As the trial unfolded, the echoes of Catherine's voice reverberated through the hallowed halls of justice, a chorus of the silenced rising to condemn the one who sought to silence them. Mark's fate, sealed by the weight of his sins, bore witness to the power of a voice that refused to be silenced, a legacy of truth that transcended the boundaries of life and death. In the end, as the gavel fell, a sense of closure descended upon those who had sought to unravel the enigma of Catherine's ghostly call. The phone, now a relic of a past best left undisturbed, remained a silent sentinel to the truth that had been uncovered, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, voices long silenced can still find a way to speak. Story 22. The old house sat silent and still, shrouded in mystery as time slipped by unnoticed. Whispers from the neighbors hinted at a past veiled in shadows, a tale of a young woman who vanished without a trace, leaving behind an empty space filled with unanswered questions. Years drifted by, the house standing as a silent sentinel to the secrets it held within its walls. Then one day new tenants arrived, ready to breathe life into the vacant rooms. But as they explored their new abode, they stumbled upon a locked bedroom, its door stubbornly sealed from the inside. With determination, they forced it open, breaking the heavy silence that had settled within. The air inside was stagnant, thick with the weight of neglect and time. Yet amidst the layers of dust, something peculiar caught their eye. The room was pristine, as if frozen in a moment long past. The bed neatly made, the mirror gleaming, untouched by the passage of years. And there on the desk, a lone candle stood, its wax a hardened pool of forgotten tears. But it was the notebook that drew them in, its pages whispering a story long forgotten. Detective Morgan gently turned the pages, each one a piece of a puzzle left behind by Elise Winters. Her words, penned with precision, told of a world unraveling, of shadows lurking just beyond sight. As the forensic technicians combed the room for clues, the truth began to unfurl. Elise, a paralegal entwined in the web of a prestigious law firm's secrets, had stumbled upon a truth too dangerous to ignore. Her disappearance, a mystery unsolved, echoed through the empty room, begging to be heard. Her supervisor's words painted a picture of a woman on the brink of discovery, her diligence leading her down a path fraught with peril. The photographs of Elise, a portrait of determination and grace, stood in stark contrast to the eerie stillness of the room she once inhabited. But it was the hidden compartment, a secret buried beneath the floorboards, that held the key to Elise's truth. Documents detailing corporate deceit, audio recordings of whispered conspiracies, each piece a thread in a tapestry of lies woven by those in power. As the investigation unfolded, a web of corruption unfurled, revealing a darkness that seeped into every corner of Elise's world. The truth, a beacon in the night, guided Detective Morgan through the labyrinth of deception, leading to a reckoning long overdue. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and privilege, stood at the center of the storm, his crimes laid bare for all to see. The hidden passage, a doorway to justice, exposed his sins in the shadows where he sought refuge. And as the trial unfolded, the truth emerged from the darkness, a ghostly whisper of justice served. Elise's legacy, a testament to her unwavering pursuit of truth, echoed through the empty rooms of the house she once called home. The house, a silent witness to the events that transpired within its walls, stood as a monument to the courage of a woman who dared to challenge the powerful. And though its rooms now lay empty, the echoes of Elise's story lingered, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, justice will prevail. Story 23. In a town shrouded in mystery, there was a house at the edge of the woods, forgotten by time and untouched by the whispers of the locals. Its windows were dark, the porch weary from the weight of years gone by. No one stepped forward to claim ownership, and the origins of its construction were lost to the passage of seasons. But one fateful day, a group of hikers ventured too close, their curiosity leading them to a chilling discovery. Names were carved into the weathered wooden siding, etched deeply as if foretelling a dark fate. At the very bottom of the list, untouched by the hands of time, was a name unknown to the hikers. It hung in the air, a spectral presence, until one of them dared to whisper, trembling, "That's mine." A call pierced the silence of the night, a mere trespassing report on the surface. Mason Wright, the lead hiker who found his name etched into the abandoned house, spoke with a voice touched by fear. Dispatchers sent officers, expecting a simple case of mischief or youthful antics, but what awaited them defied logic and reason. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as night draped the forest in shadows, her flashlight cutting through the darkness to reveal the facade of the mysterious structure. The names, 27 in total, cascaded down the eastern wall like a haunting melody. Some names had faded with age, barely visible against the weathered wood, while others remained sharp as if freshly carved. And there at the base was Mason Wright, the cut still raw with sawdust remnants. "I've never set foot here before," Mason declared, his words a misty breath in the cold air. "How could anyone know my name?" The investigation unfurled like a sinister tapestry, each thread leading deeper into the unknown. Background checks on the names revealed a chilling truth: the missing persons, 27 souls, had vanished over the span of 4 decades while hiking alone. Some cases lingered in the cold embrace of unsolved mysteries, while others remained open wounds in the hearts of loved ones. All shared a harrowing similarity: they had disappeared without a trace, swallowed by the woods. Forensic analysts meticulously documented each carving, unraveling the stories etched into the walls. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, whispered of a disappearance 37 years past, a tale of a young woman lost to the wilderness. Detective Keller delved into Mason's past, searching for any connection to the haunting names surrounding him. His tale remained steadfast, a beacon of truth in a sea of shadows. He professed no ties to the area beyond this ill-fated hike with his college friends. The focus shifted to Mason's companions, the pieces of this enigmatic puzzle. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, shared images captured during their journey. In the depths of these snapshots, analysts glimpsed a specter, a blurred figure haunting the periphery, a tall, thin presence obscured by the veil of trees. "We saw no one else on our path," Emily insisted, her voice tinged with disbelief. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller led a search of the abandoned house, uncovering a macabre tableau within its neglected walls. Personal belongings of the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves in the basement, each item bearing a name from the haunting list outside. Watches frozen in time, backpacks laden with memories, cameras capturing moments now lost, and wallets holding secrets untold. The evidence spoke of a sinister collector, a phantom of the forest. As the shadows deepened, Mason's world tilted into a realm of unease. Whispers danced on the edge of his consciousness, footprints marked his solitude in fresh snow, and figures lurked in the twilight. The veil between reality and nightmare grew thin, prompting the department to assign protection. But paranoia gripped Mason in its icy embrace, his eyes haunted by unseen terrors. A breakthrough emerged from the annals of history, buried in dusty county records. The house belonged to Victor Blackwood, a reclusive hunter lost to the mists of time. Neighbors spoke of a tall, gaunt figure that flitted on the fringe of their memories, a man of few words and unsettling presence. Blackwood's disappearance, a fading echo in the past, bore the weight of unanswered questions. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller led a search deeper into the forest, unearthing a network of hunting blinds scattered like shadows along well-trodden paths. Within one blind, a journal whispered of dark intentions, a hunter's obsession turned towards human prey. The ink on the pages bled with malice, detailing the meticulous selection and stalking of each victim immortalized on the wall. The hunt for Blackwood ignited a storm of pursuit, a symphony of search and rescue echoing through the trees. Helicopters hummed with purpose, scouring the forest with thermal eyes. Tactical teams combed every crevice, every shadowed alcove in search of the elusive figure. But the hunter remained elusive, a ghost in the woods. Mason's silence reverberated through the empty rooms of his apartment, a void where once his presence lingered. The walls bore a chilling message, freshly carved in the silence of the night. The hunter becomes the hunted. The search for Mason slipped through their fingers like mist, leaving only echoes of fear in its wake. In a hidden chamber within Blackwood's house, a grim revelation awaited the forensic team. Behind a false wall, a workshop whispered of dark deeds and unfinished carving bearing the name of the lead technician, missing without a trace. Detective Keller watched as the threads of fate intertwined, binding the past to the present in a dance of shadows. Surveillance encircled the house like a net, waiting for the inevitable. 3 nights passed, the forest holding its breath as sensors sparked to life. A figure emerged from the darkness, a specter of slender grace moving with otherworldly elegance. Tactical teams closed in, only for the cameras to blink in silence. When light returned, the figure had vanished, a wisp of memory in the night. The house stands silent under the vigilant gaze of surveillance, a sentinel against the encroaching darkness. Mason and the missing technician slipped beyond the grasp of reality, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions. The investigation continues, drawing fresh resources as whispers of similar disappearances echo through the forested expanse. The names on the wall linger like ghosts, a testament to the shadows that dwell within the woods. And the hikers, wise to the tales of the haunted house, tread softly, lest their names join the chorus of the forgotten. Story 24. She entered through the front door, stirring up dust in the stagnant air. The abandoned house stood frozen in time, walls shedding paint, furniture cloaked in sheets. Each step felt like a journey through a forgotten moment except for one peculiar detail. The doors, every door she opened led back to the same room. No matter where she wandered, no matter which knob she turned, she always found herself back in the parlor. The only escape was the way she had come, but as she turned to leave, the front door had vanished. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's body transformed the once deserted Victorian into a crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind stood at the threshold, observing forensic experts gliding through the dim interior like phantoms. The house had gained a reputation among locals, the place where compasses spun aimlessly, where whispers of being watched lingered. Now it held secrets darker than mere folklore. The initial examination suggests she's been deceased for about 3 days, murmured the medical examiner. The cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan was found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, facing the entrance as if awaiting someone. Serene expression, hands neatly folded in her lap. No signs of struggle, no defensive marks. The scene exuded a quiet unease that even seasoned investigators found disquieting. "Who discovered the body?" Lind inquired, scanning her notes. "A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers," her partner replied. They entered, spotted her seated there, mistook her for a trespasser until they approached. The house had remained uninhabited since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly 5 years ago. Legal disputes left the property in a state of neglect, unwanted, unsold, and mostly forgotten except by vandals and thrill seekers. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis. Described by friends as meticulous, driven, captivated by spaces defying conventional norms. The abandoned Victorian, notorious for disorienting visitors, would have cast an irresistible allure on her. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days prior, Lind noted. Morgan mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. Investigations unveiled that Morgan had frequented the house in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries detailed odd acoustics, chilling spots, and doors seemingly leading to different rooms each time they were opened. In her final entry, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to document what she termed spatial inconsistencies. Yet the equipment was nowhere to be found. The autopsy uncovered an unexpected detailed traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant used in certain shamanic rituals. The substance induced disorientation and vivid hallucinations, but not in lethal doses. She wasn't one for recreational substances, her boyfriend asserted during interrogation. Morgan was methodical in her research. Deliberately distorting her perceptions wouldn't have been her approach. Digital forensics unveiled remnants of deleted messages on Morgan's phone, discussions with an individual sharing her fascination with the house, someone claiming to grasp its enigmas. The exchanges grew increasingly intimate and enigmatic. "The house retains its memories," one message alluded. "It desires someone to understand." The investigation led detectives to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had corresponded with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena captivated her, evolving their professional bond into a personal connection. When questioned, Reeves displayed genuine grief over her demise. "The house has a reputation," he disclosed. The original designer incorporated optical illusions and false perspectives. He intended to bewilder and disorient. Morgan believed there was more to it, something beyond mere design tricks. However, Reeves had a solid alibi for the estimated time of death. Surveillance footage depicted him delivering a lecture at a university symposium hours away. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, now residing abroad. Contacted by investigators, he unveiled a long-held family secret. My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish in that house, he revealed. Others met the same fate, always discovered in the parlor, always appearing serene. The family labeled it the claiming. He provided investigators with journals spanning decades, chronicling deaths initially attributed to heart failure or stroke. The pattern was evident. Individuals spending significant time in the house ultimately succumbed to what the family discreetly termed the influence. A secondary search of the property unveiled a concealed compartment behind the parlor's fireplace. Within, investigators discovered Morgan's missing equipment and something more. A small chamber housing artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, arranged in a precise geometric layout. At the center sat a weathered figurine, its features smoothed by generations of touch. Analysis identified the carving as symbolizing a deity linked to liminal spaces, boundaries between worlds. Residue on the artifacts matched the alkaloid discovered in Morgan's body. The case took a twist when dust pattern forensics in the house indicated another presence during Morgan's passing. Partial fingerprints distinct from Morgan's or any known visitors were lifted from doorknobs throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the investigation, Adam Reeves was found lifeless in his apartment. Like Morgan, he sat facing the entrance, tranquil expression, the same alkaloid present in his system. Clenched in his hand was a key that fit no lock in his apartment, but matched the hidden compartment in the Victorian. In his final email sent to himself as if preserving a testament, Reeves penned, "The house doesn't ensnare you physically, it ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct, the doors lead where they always have, but something convinces you that you're retracing your steps. Once you grasp the truth, you can depart at any time, yet by then you'll have no desire to. The case remains open officially, categorized as suspicious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian has since been condemned, its access regulated by authorities. Nonetheless, whispers persist of lights glimpsed within on certain nights, and of visitors who enter but never exit. Some locals argue the house seizes those who comprehend its mysteries too intimately. Others believe Morgan and Reeves unearthed something potent and ancient, something inhabiting the interstices of conventional reality. The truth lingers as elusive as an escape in a house where every door circles back to the beginning. Story 25. The aged envelope, its corners tinged with yellowing hues, held within it a fresh stamp marked just days prior. With deliberate care, the detective unfolded its contents. A lone sheet of paper greeted her, bearing a message typed in a hurried, uneven script. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, carrying with it the lingering scent of iron. It was only upon closer inspection that the reddish smudge along the bottom edge caught her attention. Not ink, but blood. Detective Sarah Morgan swiftly secured the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision. The forensic team's findings confirmed her suspicions. The crimson stain was indeed human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved homicide that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing multiple stab wounds. Her laptop missing, notes scattered haphazardly, hinting at a connection between the attack and the story she had been pursuing. Despite tireless interviews and exhaustive investigations, the case had grown cold, and now this mysterious letter had arrived, simply addressed to the Homicide Division. The paper and envelope yielded few fingerprints, only faint smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark, however, provided a vital light after months of stagnation. Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, the walls adorned with grim crime scene photographs, intricate timelines, and fruitless suspect profiles. Pinning the letter's image at the heart of the board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our perpetrator shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner since the case's inception, scrutinized the letter thoughtfully. Or perhaps they wished to deceive us into believing so, he countered. The blood could be a mere theatrical ploy, a taunt. The forensics team traced the unique typewriter impressions to a model long out of production, a rare but not unattainable find. They embarked on a quest to locate antique enthusiasts and shops across the region. As the investigation gained momentum, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life. Her editor painted a picture of a relentless journalist dedicated to uncovering corruption. Her latest assignment had entangled her in the affairs of a wealthy family embroiled in local politics. With the family patriarch's recent passing, disputes over his will and accusations of manipulation amongst the siblings added layers of complexity. The detectives revisited Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes. Initially devastated and providing a solid alibi, subtle shifts in his demeanor emerged with the introduction of the letter into evidence, a nervous edge, a tremor in his hands. During the subsequent interview, he divulged, Rebecca mentioned feeling followed. I brushed it off as paranoia due to her investigation. I should have taken her seriously. While the team probed this avenue, a second letter materialized, emanating from the same typewriter, bearing a lengthier confession. She uncovered too much about the family, about the inheritance, about the patriarch's demise. I never intended for it to escalate like that. Their inquiry led them to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, resided. His collection of antiquities included several vintage typewriters. Questioned about them, his responses seemed rehearsed, polished. A breakthrough ensued when microscopic fibers on the envelopes matched custom stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Upon interrogation, Eleanor disclosed Richard's request to borrow her stationery a month prior. A search of Richard's abode unveiled a concealed chamber adorned with articles about Rebecca, surveillance snapshots, and a vintage typewriter identical to the one used for the letters. Blood analysis confirmed its origin as Rebecca's. Unforeseen was the financial link between Richard and Michael, revealed through bank records displaying substantial payments preceding Rebecca's demise. Confronted, Michael confessed Rebecca had uncovered evidence of Richard poisoning his father to hasten his inheritance. I informed Richard of her findings, intending to merely intimidate her into abandoning the story. I never fathomed he would resort to murder. A pivotal moment transpired when Eleanor came forth with a recording capturing a conversation between Richard and Michael, strategizing on how to handle Rebecca. Richard's voice unmistakable. She must be silenced permanently. In a bid to flee, Richard was apprehended. The prosecution's case hinged on the letters, the typewriter, financial transactions, and Eleanor's recording. Michael, striking a deal, testified against Richard. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained his innocence, shifting blame onto Michael as the sole orchestrator framing him. Yet, the weight of evidence proved insurmountable. The jury swiftly returned a guilty verdict after deliberating for less than a day. As Richard was escorted away in restraints, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's parents in the courtroom. Though no words could assuage their grief, the conviction offered a semblance of closure. The blood-stained letters remained preserved in evidence, a stark reminder that even the most meticulous crimes leave traces, and that remorse, be it genuine or strategic, can dismantle those who believe they have crafted the perfect crime. The case of Rebecca Warren etched itself as a cornerstone in detective training, illustrating that breakthroughs may stem not from advanced forensics, but from humble sources like an antiquated typewriter and the burden of guilt weighing on a killer's soul. Story 26, Whisperings of the Past. Renovations always have a way of unraveling the mysteries hidden within the walls of old homes. Dusty relics of bygone eras, forgotten treasures tucked away, waiting to be discovered once more. It was no different for Sarah and Michael when they decided to breathe new life into their recently acquired Victorian-era house. Little did they know, the echoes of the past were lingering, waiting to reveal their secrets. As the couple pried up the creaking floorboards, a delicate piece of parchment caught their eye. A letter, carefully folded and nestled beneath the time-worn wood. The paper, fragile and yellowed with age, bore a cryptic message: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could contemplate the meaning behind those ominous words, 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the silent halls, sending shivers down their spines. Enter Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for unraveling enigmatic tales. With her partner by her side, they delved into the murky depths beneath the exposed floorboards where the unsettling note lay in wait. Reed's weathered hands, accustomed to handling evidence of the past, extracted the letter with utmost care, mindful of preserving any hidden truths it may hold. The couple's unease was palpable as they recounted the chilling sound that had pierced the stillness of their newfound home. Background checks painted a picture of Sarah and Michael as ordinary newlyweds, with no hint of malice or deceit in their past. But the house itself whispered of a darker narrative, woven through the fabric of time. The abode, once belonging to the Hargrove family, bore witness to decades of untold stories. Following the passing of the last inhabitant, Margaret Hargrove, the house stood silent and empty for 2 long years. Neighbors spoke of Margaret as a solitary figure, her life veiled in shadows of seclusion. Yet the discovery of the hidden letter hinted at a tale far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Forensic analysis unveiled the age of the note, tracing it back 2 decades into the past. The trembling script spoke of fear and urgency, hinting at a time when Margaret and her late husband, Franklin, dwelled within these walls. Franklin, a respected teacher with a penchant for woodworking, seemed to harbor a hidden darkness in his final years, plagued by paranoia and whispers of a mysterious figure watching from the shadows. The puzzle pieces began to align as Reed unearthed long-buried truths from the memories of Margaret's sister, now aged and frail in a nursing home. A tale of debts unpaid, of a shadowy collector who came knocking thrice, his presence a haunting specter in their lives. Franklin's refusal to sell the house to settle his debts set in motion a chain of events that culminated in a tragedy buried deep beneath the foundation. With painstaking precision, Reed and her team excavated the hidden recesses of the house, revealing a grim secret concealed for decades. The skeletal remains of Victor Mercer, a notorious loan shark and collector, lay silent beneath the earth, his fate sealed by the hands of those he sought to intimidate. Margaret's diaries, discovered in the attic, painted a harrowing picture of a life haunted by guilt and fear. The relentless knocking that echoed through the halls, a reminder of the sins buried beneath the floorboards. Justice, though delayed, finally found its mark as the truth came to light, unraveling the web of lies that had ensnared them all. As Sarah and Michael chose to part ways with the house, unable to bear the weight of its dark history, the once grand estate stood abandoned, a silent witness to the secrets of the past. Whispers of phantom knocks in the dead of night lingered in the air, a chilling reminder of the shadows that still danced within its walls. Detective Reed closed the case, her final report a testament to the enigmatic nature of human stories. Some mysteries, she mused, are destined to remain shrouded in the mists of time, their truths obscured by the passage of years. And so the house stood as a sentinel of the past, its secrets entwined with the echoes of a bygone era, waiting to be unraveled by those brave enough to listen. Story 27. The aged apartment exhaled a weary sigh as the heating system groaned and the pipes rattled in a familiar chorus of creaks and murmurs. To her, it was all part of the building's aging soul, a symphony of sounds that danced through the walls. But then, in a moment that pierced the tranquility, she heard it. A voice, delicate yet distinct, floated through the vents like a ghostly whisper. It wasn't the usual background noise of a neighbor's chatter. It was a beckoning, calling her name into the shadows of the walls. Intrigued and unsettled, she pressed her ear against the cold metal grate, her heart drumming a nervous beat in her chest. A rush of icy air brushed against her cheek, carrying with it a soft, almost playful voice. "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the heart of the empty apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that had been forcibly removed from the wall. The forensics team moved with precision around her, capturing the scene in flashes of light and careful documentation. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, only to be discovered after a week when a putrid odor seeped through the building. What awaited them inside the ventilation system defied logic. Officer Patel, his voice measured, read from his notepad about Alina's distressing reports of voices from the vents, all dismissed as quirks of an old building by management. Shaw knelt by the vent, tracing the desperate scratch marks etched around its edges. These marks, she noted quietly, were not made by tools but by frantic fingernails clawing from within. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a vibrant spirit, had succumbed to a darkness hidden within her own home. Her sister, during an emotional interview, revealed Alina's descent into paranoia in the days leading to her disappearance. The whispers, the feeling of being watched, Alina believed they emanated from the very walls that surrounded her sanctuary. Shaw's gaze swept the apartment, noting the eerie precision of the chair beneath the vent, as if someone had sat there, listening intently. The forensic report unveiled chilling details. Fibers entwined in the vent grating matched Alina's favorite cardigan. A foreign fingerprint lingered on the inside of the vent cover, and recordings from Alina's phone unearthed a world of haunting whispers. Alone in her car, rain cascading overhead, Shaw listened to the spectral dialogue between Alina and an unseen presence that promised entry. Digging deeper into the building's history, a pattern emerged. Previous tenants had fled in haste, haunted by noises in the walls, hallucinations of voices, and unexplained dread. Harold Weber, the enigmatic building superintendent, emerged as a figure of interest, his calm facade masking a hidden truth. With the discovery of a concealed passage behind a loose tile in Alina's bathroom, a twisted reality unraveled. Within the narrow maintenance corridors, remnants of a clandestine existence were uncovered: a flashlight, remnants of meals, a solitary existence within the very walls of the building. Shaw's suspicions solidified as Weber's meticulously organized files revealed a chilling obsession with his victims, particularly Alina. In a storage unit linked to Weber, a macabre collection of mementos surfaced: trinkets from past tenants, a shrine to his twisted connections with those he watched. Arrested in the dead of night, Weber greeted his fate with a serene smile, his cryptic words hinting at a sinister connection between himself and the building's very essence. As the trial unfolded, the chilling truth of Weber's symbiotic delusions came to light. The jury swiftly delivered their verdict, condemning him for his meticulous manipulation and cruel games. Yet even in captivity, Weber's haunting words lingered, a reminder that his presence still echoed within the walls of the vacant apartment building. Now the once familiar halls stand silent, a spectral hush enveloping the spaces where whispers once thrived. Despite the renovations and fresh beginnings, a chilling undercurrent lingers. Residents speak of ethereal voices carried on frosty breaths, of unseen figures lingering in the shadows. The building's aging bones groan, the pipes rattle a melody of mystery that continues to weave through the walls, a reminder that some secrets are buried deep within the very heart of the structure itself.